Guys, Frylock back on the streams. You already know we're running Borderlands 2, one of the OG favorites. Gunzerker build. I'm about to dive into it for y'all. Last time we were running Cave Story. That shit was fire. But I do not want to play that right now because I would have to be really fucking locked in. And we're not doing that. In the meantime, tomorrow I'm gonna be modding DS's. That shit's gonna be so fun. So we're gonna watch a video about modding DS's again. Yep. I've done it before, but I just think it'd be a good idea before I go and do it tomorrow, because I have to mod another DS, and then I'm probably going to focus on that shit tomorrow. It's going to be great. I'm playing Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories. Guys, I'm telling you, it's great stuff here.
And I'm going to try to make it as simple and easy to understand as possible. But first, let me show you what's actually required. I'm going to turn off my 3DS, and I'm going to be modding this one right here. This is my old Nintendo 3DS XL.
Okay, why isn't getting it?
But of course, you are going to need a 3DS system that's not modded already. Next up, you're definitely going to need an SD card. So right here in my hands, I have two different types. On the left is a micro SD card, and on the right is a standard size SD card. Some newer models of 3DSs and 2DSs use this type of SD card, but if you have an older one like this, you're gonna have the larger SD card.
I have that
if you
too.
don't have an SD card yet, I'd
Okay,
my 3DS to get all
whatever,
games
I'm not tripping.
20 minutes. Today, I'll be showing you everything you need to do to get your
I'm sorry guys, it is gonna suck.
As simple and easy to understand as possible. But first, let me show you what's actually required. I'm going to turn off my 3DS, and I'm going to be modding this one right here. This is my old Nintendo 3DS XL. I don't know where the Mudkip sticker went, but of course you are going to need a 3DS system that's not modded already. Next up, you're definitely going to need an SD card. So right here in my hands, I have two different types. On the left is a micro SD card, and on the right is a standard size SD card. Some newer models of 3DSs and 2DSs use this type of SD card, but if you have an older one like this, you're gonna have the larger SD card. If you don't have an SD card yet, I definitely recommend getting one that's larger than this. This is only 4 gigabytes. I would go for at least 128 gigabytes or maybe 64. Next up, you'll need something like this, which can plug into a computer and has an SD card slot right here. I use one that looks like this, and the reason is that so you can put in your SD card right here and then plug it like a flash drive into your computer. If your computer or laptop already has an SD card in it, then this won't exactly be necessary. So, the first thing you'll want to do is plug the SD card into your computer.
I remember I used to get stuck on this mission. I used to get to this part and then like have to restart my game.
Now that your SD card popped up right here, right click on it and click on format, and then you want to make sure it's formatted in FAT32. If you click on it, you may see stuff like NTFS, FAT32, exFAT. It has to be FAT32, and then just click on start, and it'll wipe every file on the SD card, so be careful. If you have any files on your SD card from your 3DS or just from anything in general, definitely make sure to back them up on your computer before you format it. Once it's formatted in FAT32, you are ready to get started. So let's go back to the 3DS and put in your SD card. Got my 3DS ready. We're going to put the SD card back in from the computer. There we go. And make sure to turn it on, and then we're going to go over to system settings. When it loads up and you're over here on system settings, first make sure you have an active internet connection added. There we go, connection successful. I actually had no internet on here, but I've now added my internet and we're good to go. Now go all the way back to this main area, and you're going to want to go down to other settings and then go all the way to the right and click on system update. It is now updating, and for this tutorial,
Okay, we do have to order one of those. Oh, cool. Okay. Oh man. Alright, guys.
tutorial, I will have the version number on screen that I'm using at the time of recording this, but in the future, you may have a higher update version.
All this YouTube shit is made. Okay, this guy's spitting Loki. Let's see what he has to say. I've always played.
Getting your flu shot at CVS matters because we'll work around the most important schedules. Yours.
Hey, vacation next week, Lisa. 5 days, nice. Big win for your alma mater.
I just turned 30 years old. I've been a gamer for as long as I can remember, with my first memory of video games being Spyro 2. But Spyro 2 was released in 1999. That's 4 years of video game releases that I never got to experience. I feel cheated somehow, so I want to change that. We're gonna go to the actual year I was born, 1995, and take a look at the games that came out when I came out. I want to find the best game from that year. Let's start with Warcraft 2. Before World of Warcraft, the MMO responsible for making me gain 60 pounds as a 13-year-old was regular Warcraft. Warcraft 1 through 3 were all real-time strategy games that completely killed it on sales and popularity. Some of you found out from my last video that I'm not a well-versed gamer, so it may be no surprise that I have never played the original Warcrafts. I was also shitting my pants as a newborn when the second one came out, in my defense. Now, getting Warcraft 2 loaded up was easy. I dropped $10 on the Battle.net app, and in 18 seconds, the 600 megabyte game was ready to launch. Now, you'll have to adjust your eyes to the classic look that 1995 games have for this video, but I actually find old graphics quite charming and elegantly simple. The game opens up with a cinematic explaining what had happened since Warcraft 1. Basically though, it's humans versus orcs and you choose which side you want to fight on. I of course went for the orc campaign. Before each level begins, you get briefed on the mission details and are given objectives on the bottom right. I'm trying to remember another real-time strategy game I've played before, but this might be my first one. Needless to say, I got a bit lost. My first instinct was to charge into the fog of war and initiate battle, which is breaking rule 1 of any real-time strategy game. Rule 1 of real-time strategy games is start to build up your resources. Once I remembered this, I found out you could create peons from the Great Hall, who I'd then command to chop trees and collect gold from the gold mine. My brain is not conditioned for real-time strategy games, so I had yet to comprehend movement for my units, which is clearly identified here when my peon spotted an enemy. Shout out to the on-screen tips that obviously knew I was suffering. A few minutes later, I had peons racking up my gold as I sat and did nothing. This is probably how Jeff Bezos feels every day. I completed the objectives for the first level, and in the second level, I learned that you can highlight a whole bunch of NPCs at once and move them in one solid block. Oh, that's cool. After a few zug-zugs and alrights, I was on my way to level 3. This is where the game got a lot more involved. Additionally, this is the point where the game started to feel more like a game to me. I was having fun, managing all the different aspects of building and upgrading my base. As I increased the amount of workers I had, I would have to build farms so that they could eat. And you build farms by using golden wood. That golden wood could also be spent on building even higher level builds like a shipyard. The shipyard allows you to create boats, which are used for collecting oil. The game started to become more complex quickly, and not complex in a confusing way, rather a layered way. There was a snowball effect type thing going on here, and each little peon contributed to the cause. Warcraft 2 and other real-time strategy games feed directly into that sweet spot that games should sit in. It uses some brain power, but not too much to where it feels like an annoying chore or something like that. Just enough brain power to forget about your surroundings or real life worries. For now, Warcraft 2 is a great game, but it's not the best one from 1995. Maybe I'm not a real-time strategy game enthusiast, but I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10. It's a solid game, and even more impressive that it came out in 1995. Well, luckily, there are more games on the list, and next up is Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy Kong's Quest. In modern gaming, it's basically impossible to find platformer games on the top of the gaming genres that year. But in 1995, platformers were easily one of the top genres of gaming. And once I loaded into the first level, it was my job to figure out controls. Each platformer has its own rules and flow to it, something you better get familiar with fast because most platformers ramp up the difficulty quite quickly. The unique mechanic in Donkey Kong Country 2 is the dual component of using both Diddy and Dixie Kong. Now, the best part of any platformer, in my opinion, are the collectibles that are strategically placed in each level. They're placed up high, hidden behind or below the main floor, or just plain impossible to find unless you search the level intimately. 100%ing a game like this would take a ton of patience and honestly some skill. The first level was pretty easy to beat, but like I said, the second level turned the difficulty level up almost absurdly. In the first level, you could never fall off the platforms. In this level, you can fall off easily, and I did many times. And these early levels are sort of a tutorial for the rest of the game. I think the best video games are the ones that slowly teach you how to play it, not giving you all the answers right away. I wish I did have those answers because I died a lot more than I thought I would in this game. I was frustrated and I felt stupid actually. How can I not clear level 2 of a children's game from 1995? I got through it eventually, but all of those deaths stacked up until I found another shiny coin my pea-brain had to have. I had no idea how you were supposed to get to it, but before I could even find out, I ran out of lives and got a game over. Unlike modern games that autosave every 1 minute, I was sent back to the main screen and met with the saved file screen with nothing to load up. I guess I'm restarting from level 1. Once I got back to where I was, I eventually got further and found Kong College. This is where you could finally save the game. I am playing on an emulator, so I do have save states, but I forgot to make one earlier. The rest of my playthrough was pretty smooth, actually, once I got more comfortable with the movement. The boss fight against the bird was fun, though I had way more fun in the next level using the spider power-up. You press a button to shoot webs, and the second press of that button would stop that web in its place, allowing you to jump on it. Clearing the end of Crocodile Cauldron was guarded by an evil sword boss. Modern games have you battling some seriously gruesome looking monsters, but old Nintendo games were like, fuck it, make them defeat a sword with cannonballs. It was quite tough, actually. Hectic, even. I think Donkey Kong Country 2 is a great game. I haven't really talked about it before, but I love the speedrunning community. So after I beat Donkey Kong Country 2, I could see myself stretching out the game's playability through speedrunning. Speedrunning is amazing. I mean, if you look at a game like Super Mario 64, there are still, 30 years later, new movements and mechanics being found that have made the game last as long as it has. And for all those reasons, I'd rank this game 9 out of 10. The gameplay, the music, and its difficulty are all lovely. If any game was to top the charts for 1995, this was the one. I mean, the development team for Chrono Trigger is often referred to as the Dream Team. You've got Hironobu Sakaguchi, who created Final Fantasy, Yuji Horii, who created Dragon Quest, and Akira Toriyama, the author of the Dragon Ball manga series. I'm just gonna come out and say it. Chrono Trigger is easily the best game of these first 3 games we've talked about so far. I don't know how else to explain this, but the second I started the game, I had a sense that it wasn't like other games. The first thing the game has you do is head to Lean Square, where the Millennial Fair was ongoing. I didn't realize it until now, but it's kind of sad how many great games I've missed throughout the years. I play a lot of competitive games, so while other gamers experiment with different genres and styles, I'm stuck sweating, desperately trying to improve, but the reality is, Most video games I play have lacked a depth that I didn't know I appreciated. The depth I'm talking about? Well, how about here at the Millennial Fair? They have a system in place that resembles an arcade where you can earn silver points from mini games set up around the square. Maybe I've got a few wires connected to wrong places in my brain, but I found this bell game way too fun. I'm going until I don't get a point. This has to be this is a world record. Is this like a diagnosis of some kind? Like, do I have a problem? I messed around for way too long, but eventually I ended up in the right place to cue the storyline. I bumped into this girl, and she must have seen me killing it at the bell game because she asked me to hang out with her all day. Now, the main attraction of the Millennial Fair was at the northern part where my nerdy friend would show off her new invention. This thing could teleport you from one machine to the other. The foreshadowing was pretty strong because I knew when the little redhead got into that machine, something would go wrong. And I was right. A rift opened up and sent her back in time. Like any gentleman would do, I agreed to go into the rift to look for her. Now, the game finally begins. Except, I lost all my health fighting the robot on the western side of the fair and was immediately destroyed upon exiting the rift. I forgot to make a save state again, so I had to restart the game from the beginning.
Out here, fuel isn't always in the tank. Sometimes it's in the cup holder. This holiday season, get any size hot coffee and 2 hostess snacks for just $5. Pilot and Flying J, see you out here.
Go ahead, make your day with Samsung OLED S95.
Once I returned to this spot, I had enough health to fight back, and the combat in this game is actually quite fun. It uses a system called active time battle, which I think is in some Final Fantasy games. But I would use my sword to slash enemies, able to freely choose which one I attack first. I also had MP, magic points, that would be used later on for more powerful attacks. Furthermore, the game gives you 4 item slots that you can swap gear between. Being able to select which weapons and gear you want to use is great for customization and power creep. There's also plenty of supplemental items like heals and tonic, ether and shelters, all there to aid you in battle. You can collect these items from chests or through reward after defeating enemies. All great role-playing game staples. The map also changed drastically in this new era of time. I think we're back about 400 years or so, which I learned from talking to random people in a bar. Impressively, it only takes about 30 to 40 minutes of gameplay to get sucked into the story and environment. I love feeling like I am in a completely unique universe, and Chrono Trigger nails this. The story, by the way, is enthralling. The redhead girl we bumped into in the beginning is the current time Princess Nadia, and the time we just got teleported back to has a king and queen. The queen of 400 years ago is Nadia's great-great-grandmother and is in trouble of being captured and killed. Of course, if that happens, Nadia, the girl we met at the fair, would cease to exist. A grandfather paradox. The game builds on this story, and you'll find yourself accompanied by side characters. When you have at least 1 or more team members, your techs, the magic style attacks, they upgrade. So normally I have a move called Cyclone, but when I am with Luca, the girl who created the teleporter, that Cyclone becomes a Fire Whirl, a spinning attack that hits multiple enemies with a ton of damage. I think this is an awesome way of spicing up combat, and I am falling in love with the game quickly. I still have a lot more to play, so I can't tell you how the game ends, but I can say this. I'm glad I was born in 1995 and decided to do this video because I get to experience an amazing game. It's an easy 10 out of 10 for me. I can't wait to finish it later. It is going to be difficult to beat Chrono Trigger, but we still have 5 games to go over, and next up is Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island. Yeah, it's turning out that 1995 was not a bad year for video game releases at all. I might be overreacting here, but every single title sequence for these games have been great. It really drops you directly into their respective worlds. Now, just like Donkey Kong Country, each platformer has its unique set of mechanics. For Yoshi's Island, we get to deal with Baby Mario, and if Yoshi gets hit, he will float away in a bubble, crying. You've got 10 seconds to retrieve him, or you lose a life. It's pretty simple, but something not so simple was how slippery the movement felt. It's hard to explain, but it feels like you can't adjust your movement as easily as you could in Donkey Kong Country 2. But maybe this is just a temporary feeling. Speaking of feeling, Yoshi's Island is probably one of the happiest looking games I have ever seen. The surrounding 2D art is colorful, floral, and saturated. Now, I didn't mean to do this, but I found myself comparing Yoshi's Island to Donkey Kong Country 2, and starting out, I'm not too impressed with Yoshi's Island's gameplay. These tip blocks littered the platforms, and the extra collectibles weren't too difficult to reach. I know how platformers work, so I knew it was probably only a matter of time before this changed. But 4 levels in, on the first boss battle, I still found the game to be a little boring. It's almost as if things are moving at 0.5 speed. Beating this boss took negative brain power. There is no pattern or problem to solve, and even though I got hit, I had 25 seconds to retrieve Baby Mario, which was even easier because you get a couple seconds of invulnerability. The next level did begin to show some promise with hiding the extra collectibles in spots that were a little harder to get to, but everything still seems slow. Moving on through the levels, it's apparent that this game prioritizes the collectibles, and the difficulty scale in acquiring those is outpacing the enemy's difficulty scale. I died about 15 times in Donkey Kong Country 2, but I don't think I've lost even 1 life on Yoshi's Island. Another hour of gameplay passed, and the levels were continuing the trend of complicating the collectibles and puzzles required to progress, but enemies stayed mostly the same. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, it just wasn't my favorite experience. I mean, even the Boo boss fight was uninspired. It's a super chill game, but Yoshi's Island was not my favorite.
Getting your flu shot matters. Because there are things nobody should miss out on. And getting your flu shot at CVS matters too.
You ever hear a city hum like it's got a story to tell? That's Nashville.
I'm gonna give it a 6 out of 10, but maybe the final levels will change that when I decide to complete it later on. The 5th game on the list that I played was MechWarrior 2 31st Century Combat, a vehicle simulation game played originally on the PC. I won't lie, I was not excited to try this one out. It looks very outdated, but contrary to its looks, it was far from simple. First of all, it took me a good half a day to find a copy that would work with my system. Once I did find a portable version, we were up and running, except we weren't. MechWarrior 2 has taught me how grateful I am to have standardized button mapping, because the controls for this game were confusing, to say the least. Just take a look at these keyboard commands. I'm pretty sure if I could figure out how to work my mech, I could probably land a Boeing 747 too. Since I didn't think to Google right away, I went into the files and found a list of the controls, and that just made things worse. But I will say, when I did figure it out, the game got a lot better. The game has 2 clans you can join, and you accept missions that were either search and destroy or base strike. Regardless of the mission, I found myself overheating. A pretty annoying mechanic that would shut down your mech for an uncomfortably long time if you fired too many shots too quickly. But balancing your firepower and the overheating was part of the experience. The mech suits were actually individually categorized into sections which would break when under fire. It's a pretty cool feature that I honestly did not expect to find in a game from 1995. Still, I could not get over the environmental detail, and it gave a pretty empty feeling, something I feel greatly inhibited the experience for me. On the contrary, the music enhanced the playthrough. But to be fair, most soundtracks from these older games way outlast their gameplay. All in all, I can tell why this game was popular back in the day. I think it really shines in some areas, and at that time, standardized button mapping wasn't really there for PC games, so I don't think that affected the players too much. So, subtracting the annoyance of figuring out the controls in the beginning, I'd give this game a solid 7 out of 10. I think it has a lot of potential for those of you who enjoy using your entire keyboard to play a game. So go ahead and play it if you like that. So far, it's safe to say that there are so many good games in 1995, and I feel like I missed out. But we still have some more. One game that was high on the list was a little artillery tactical game called Worms. There have been many Worms games since the original one in 1995, so it has obviously been a successful video game concept. I gotta be honest though, this game is not that fun without other real people to play with. It's not very easy to aim your weapons, and the AI has no issues and systematically clapped me. The game does have a lot to offer though. Plenty of weapon choices, wind modifiers, and many maps that challenge your geometric calculations. It feels unfair to give a rating since I didn't really play the game properly, but I could see this being a lot of fun with a few drinks on the weekend with the boys. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. It's more of a every once in a while game. All right, let's move on to our next game of 1995, a game called Full Throttle. Even though I haven't played any of the previous games, I had at least heard of them. But Full Throttle I've never heard in any conversation. So this game is categorized as a graphic adventure video game, but I feel it was more of an interactive story mode game. Now I've rarely, if ever, touched a game like this before, so when it took 10 minutes to go through the intro sequence cinematics, I didn't know what to think. Like, am I watching a movie or am I playing a video game? But those first 10 minutes were important. They, of course, laid down the story, and we learned that the main protagonist belongs to a motorcycle gang called the Polecats. The motorcycle manufacturer, apparently the last manufacturer still around, was owned by this guy and his shady vice president, Adrian Ripburger. Cool fact, by the way, this Ripburger guy is voiced by Mark Hamill. Anyways, the two of them were on the way to a shareholders meeting, and to keep things brief, Ripburger is scheming to take control of the company. While they're on their way, the Polecats drove past them, and that impressed the CEO, who used to be a biker himself, but Ripburger wasn't having it. Later on down the road at a bar, this Ripburger guy asks the Polecats to escort their limousine to the meeting, but Ben, the guy we'll be controlling later on, declines.
Not interested.
Things take a turn for the worse as Ben got beat up in the back of the bar, and we wake up hearing news that the rest of the biker gang is up ahead where an ambush is planned.
I overheard them say something about an ambush up the road.
I wasn't too impressed so far. I personally feel video games should have more gameplay than cutscenes, but I was very wrong in this opinion. Full Throttle has become one of my favorite games I've ever played.
What are you?
Alright, so now that we're playing, the first objective we had to do was to restore the bike with the help from Maureen. To do this, I would need to find 3 parts that she requires to fix it. Now, this is one of those games where dialogue is important to listen to because it provides information and story elements necessary to advance. I didn't realize this at first, and I failed to listen that well, and the consequences would soon be felt. More impressive than the dialogue and story building was the gameplay. Historically, I prefer games with a high skill ceiling and freedom of movement. Full Throttle has none of that, but is still perfect in my eyes. When you hover over objects on screen, sometimes the cursor gets a little red outline around it, which indicates that you can interact with it. Not everything in the environment has a purpose or can be clicked, but our job is to figure out what is important. I was stumped for about 30 minutes trying to figure out what to do. In those 30 minutes, however, I became very analytical of the environment, and I was indirectly forced to experience every tiny detail of it. One of the 3 items I had to get back to Maureen, the girl fixing my bike, was a gas can filled with oil. Here's how I ended up getting it. First of all, you need a gas can. I grabbed this in Maureen's shop before I left. Next, I had to find where I could get gas. While I was exploring and searching in those first 30 minutes, I figured out in the upper right of the map that this was a gas tower. Great, I just gotta get the gas from there. Of course, the problem is I have to get through the locked door first. For the next 15 minutes or so, I interacted with every possible thing I saw again, but with a stroke of luck, I clicked on the small section above Todd and found a cabinet. I finally came across something that I had missed, but Ben told me
It's empty.
But he also said something else.
But there's something hanging on the door.
I searched and searched, but I didn't see anything on the door until I clicked right where I needed to. On accident. This tiny little 5-pixel long gray thing is a lockpick. So apparently in this game, you've got to really pay attention to your surroundings. Now, with the help of the lockpick, the door at the gas tower was able to be unlocked. I tried to climb up the ladder, but an alarm went off and the police were alerted.
All right there. I'm talking to you, boy.
Of course, it wasn't going to be that simple. So I figured I would just try again, and obviously going up the ladder wouldn't work. So I chose to go towards the back of the tower where it looked a lot more shadowy.
Blaine, where are you? Hey, where is he?
It felt good to get something right fairly quickly, too. That pride vanished fast because now the police were patrolling on top of the tower, preventing me from getting the gas. After wandering around for another 5 minutes, I came back and noticed the hover sled has a gas cap conveniently hanging out of the vehicle. Another few minutes passed and I was stumped again. This game demands that you keep patient and keen-eyed because if I had, I would have saw that there was a hose I could have grabbed a long time ago in Maureen's shop. Finally, Finally, after 2 hours since the game started, I would make some progress. You'd think that this was upsetting to me, but I found the whole experience fun as hell. I'm not going to give everything away in case you plan on playing this game, which I strongly suggest. So even though I love this game, unfortunately, it loses a lot of its fun on a second or third playthrough. So although it's one of my favorite games of all time now, I think it might not be that fun to play after one playthrough. I'm still going to give it an easy 9 out of 10.
ADHD feels like if I have to do this one simple task, I am greeted by a bunch of other roadblocks, which makes that one simple task a whole lot harder.
I found he wasn't paying attention as well as I'd like him to. Also, he was up, wandering around, pestering his siblings.
When I heard about Kelbury, I definitely had a feeling in myself that, oh, this is the medicine that I need to take.
I really started to notice that he was able to stay on task. When I'd watch him do his homework, he wouldn't get as distracted by small things around him. He was...
And the final game. From 1995 was another platformer.
Let's play with Foxfire.
Hey y'all! got here. These games made me sick. They're that bad. Or maybe I shouldn't lick their discs that much. Video games are the biggest moneymakers in entertainment today. Over 3 billion people play video games, with many genres that failed to reach an audience in previous years, now selling millions of copies with huge, dedicated fandoms. We have giant events celebrating the medium, large assortments of merchandise available in any store you can think of, more games releasing every single day than ever before, companies acquiring studios for billions, later shutting down said studios, mass layoffs across the board, launch day disasters, rising prices, anti-consumer practices, and Luigi's Mansion 2 HD. Hey, can you spit on me? I also love video games. Feels like you can't check in on video game news anymore without being identified as a witness in the process. Something sticky is always going on, whether it's Donkey Kong's price point or war crimes. And with every game getting hit with controversies, whether they're justified or not, it just makes for an unpleasant experience staying in the know. Especially when these controversies are either piss dumb or some of the most serious conversations you could possibly have. And do I want to hear what the gamers think about whaling? I might as well listen, because what the hell else is there to talk about video games these days? You ever actually sit down and watch one of their game showcase events put on by your best friends? Oh, me and Microsoft go way back. We've been through it all together. Them fucking me over, them pissing on my open wounds. Bing. So I can't wait to see what wonders they have in store for me here.
I have been in the space with Lewy body dementia for over 37 years. That disease has taken my father, my sister, and my youngest brother.
Gosh, that was so my Microsoft. That sucked. Well, Sony, they know me so well. They know the exact games I love to play. They've been a tease. God, I'm hoping I don't give a about this next game. Oh, booyah! Nintendo. I'll take anything. Oh! The video game industry has made me cynical as hell, but when it makes so much money, yet it's pumped back into CEO pockets and projects designed to capitalize on trends rather than create genuinely worthwhile experiences, and then when those fail, studios are shut down, developers are laid off, and the higher-ups have no idea why their stupid fucking dumb fucking trend-chasing projects fail after they give themselves a raise for doing nothing while they're sitting on a graveyard of franchises that customers would vastly prefer seeing again as just normal video games. But no, let's try to make more trash all about wasting your money, your time, and their resources. Can you blame me? Well, it's easier than blaming the video game industry itself. It gave me balls. But you know, this isn't really a new concept. Pretty much every generation this happens. It's just served up a little differently. It's like how brown and gray shooters were the thing back in the Xbox 360 PS3 days, with lots of DLC, can't forget that, or cutesy cool mascot platformers on the Super Nintendo and Genesis. You know, lots of studios were forced to make games like this because they were in. And you can find endless accounts of corrupt business practices and horror stories throughout all of gaming history. Though I feel in modern times, we're hitting a breaking point with these practices due to how absurd budgets are for video game projects and how long they take to finish. It makes it so then when companies chase games, by the time they catch them, it's 5 years later. Nobody cares anymore, and they spend hundreds of millions of dollars for nothing. And what's the type of game that everybody's trying to make that's aiding in the collapse of society? Bad. Live service games. Now, what's that? Bad. Picture this. Your video game never ends. You boot it up and are consistently served new content. It's almost like it's alive. That's really cool. Yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you. The concept of a live service game, is honestly incredible. Your game no longer has a definitive end. It evolves over time. New content added regularly, frequent updates, a community of players experiencing this all together. That sounds awesome! Might be because I haven't cleaned my ears in a while. But hey, it's almost like I never have to buy another video game ever again. If the one I'm playing never ends, what's the point? I play Dota too. Alright, well let's take a look at a successful live service game to see what the hell is going on here. This is Fortnite. And this is my credibility. Damn it, it's gone! Listen, let's be real here. As much as it's easy to clown around on Fortnite because I've seen a 12-year-old say it's cool, I think we're being incredibly disingenuous to downplay how insane of an accomplishment this project is. Alright, so it's a free download, and booting it up, like, this is a game platform and a game platform. You got regular Fortnite, Lego Fortnite, Fortnite Festival, Rocket Racing, plus these community creations, all for free. And they're constantly shaking up the core experience with changes to the map, or hell, a flat-out brand new one replacing the old, character skins in collaboration with some of the biggest IPs out there. I can play Weezer on the menu. Can you do any of this in WarioWare Move It? So then why the hell do I own this? I don't know how many games have been this ambitious, delivered upon that ambition, while being free to play, with basically all in-game purchases being completely superfluous. Only things you gotta pay for are the Weezer and the sort. This game is truly free to play. And with the amount of content available, constant updates, and a huge community of players, it feels like you're genuinely a part of something massive when you play this. Now, I don't mean to give off "someone please tell Fortnite to f*** me" sort of vibes, though, hey, this is the live service game. But things weren't always like this. Fortnite launched in 2017 as a video game. It was initially an early access release you had to pay money for, focused on this mode right here, Save the World. Basically a paid online co-op survival, not free game that cost money where you spent cash to fight off zombies for $40. It wasn't free. Nobody played it. But later on, they launched this free Battle Royale spin-off, which became Fortnite's main claim to fame. And this was built upon considerably over, well, the coming months, weeks, days. They were updating this thing constantly. And not only were they introducing new features, they were rewarding players for tuning in all day, every day. Limited time events, cosmetics, items, some that were genuinely a blink and you miss it moment. And to get some of this junk, you had to play a lot. And you couldn't just put it off, because if you did, the rewards you may be working towards wouldn't be available anymore. Things would happen within the game's world, like a meteor popping up, this rift. It spread word of mouth, like, damn, you gotta check in on Fortnite to see what's going on. They really cultivated something special here, building upon this consistently from day one for years, to the point where I don't really think anybody can beat them. Yet they're still losing money in all this. Obviously, paying developers to keep developing a game compared to a one-and-done project is a fair bit more expensive, but damn, look at Fortnite. Look how much money you can make from doing something like this. That's what every game company is saying nowadays. And hey, you gotta spend money to make money. Look at Fortnite. That made billions of dollars, so sure, you can invest hundreds of millions into this live service game project because people obviously love live service games. Look at Fortnite. So it'll make that money back and then some, because look at Fortnite.
As modern professionals, we consume a lot of energy, especially when we travel. In order to make life more renewable, the Anker Solix F3800 Plus has become the best tool for offsetting a big portion of my personal and professional energy use. It's more than a backup system. It's how I keep my footprint smaller while doing what I love. It takes thousands of watts of energy to power all the cameras used in a production and all the computers used in the editing process, so it really feels like making an impact. No noise, no fuel, just clean, quiet energy I can control. Every render, every file transfer, every export, it all runs through the power I've created, and that feels good. With over 3,800 watts of storage, I can work all day without pulling from the grid. I keep it in the garage, fully charged and ready, so I'm covered when the sun's not shining or the power goes out. If I'm going to tell stories about protecting the wild, I want to make sure my own power comes from the right place.
You know, just look at Fortnite. The video game industry is run by people who know nothing about their products. They just look at numbers and make decisions based on that. Oh, Overwatch has over 50 million players, while our game, I'm Cheap to Make and Begging for a Sequel, has only sold 5 million units? That's probably because it's not like Overwatch. Listen, I understand the need to experiment with what's wildly successful. And I'm not saying these companies shouldn't attempt live service projects. I'm saying they stink at it. But it's totally worth it to risk it all in a game that's designed from the get-go to cash in on what's popular, to attempt to appeal to an audience that'll never care about you, rather than use that money to make titles that your fan base actually wants. Look! Footage of somebody who agrees with this sentiment.
Hi, I'm a horrible person. I don't bathe. I smell. I murder for immense pleasure. I stink.
So what exactly is a live service game? Is it just something with consistent updates and in-game purchases? If so, I got some bad news. Well, for me, I'd say it's much like a Denny's. I can't describe one, but I know it when I see it. Found it. Let's start with the main menu. A foot-long tab up top, all for me to explore with the shoulder buttons. Oh my god, this game must have so much content if it has tabs, much like how I must have so many interests. Okay, so we have the store where I can finally get this shit out of my pants. The battle pass. Oh boy, what's that? They're lucky these pants got 2 pockets. Oh, and then there's the cosmetics tab, which lets us customize our character with all kinds of stuff we buy from the store. Thank God for cargos. Oh, my character's standing right there next to all different kinds of advertisements for better characters. Look at all these events going on. It's like I'm actually doing something. How do I do anything? No, seriously, look at these menus. They're so bloated with a million options, and they use the tiniest buttons and fonts imaginable. Sometimes they'll play a video featuring all the crap in the latest update. Feels like the screen on a slot machine. But for all this junk they're pushing into my face, there must be a huge experience behind all this. I mean, why else would they let me spend hundreds of dollars on cosmetics if the game I use them in isn't worth a damn? Let's enter a match! I bought cargo shorts for nothing? I feel that many of these live service games have decent gameplay at their core that would work well as, well, traditional video games. A full single-player campaign with actual level designs, maybe local and online multiplayer mode, standard price and release, you know, nothing special. But this live service setup mucks up everything, as the entire game is now structured around online multiplayer, content updates, and monetization. Online multiplayer is great and everything, but when that's all your game is, you better have the content to back it up. But most of these games launch with nothing. Barely enough maps or characters or variety to keep the constant loop of multiplayer interesting. All because you can just wait to put those out in the form of updates. But guess what? That's hard, especially when after you launch your live service game, many of the developers are going to be too busy maintaining everything and fixing issues, plus the higher-ups want to see revenue spikes as soon as possible, so it's easier to fart out some cosmetics for obscene prices, all while the substantial content takes longer than expected to finish. And you gotta strike while the iron is hot, particularly when that iron is piss cold to begin with. You know, cold like piss. My kidneys are shutting down. You really gotta be on it to update these games as quickly as possible to maintain interest. I can't tell you how many games launch with nothing, and it takes like 2 months to get any updates of value. And the core gameplay being fine isn't good enough. You design your game with all this garbage, expecting players to keep coming back day in and day out, spending all this money on useless junk just to express themselves, and the best you can say about your game is that it's fine? Listen, I play loads of fine games that don't have all this nonsense, make these many promises, ask me to tune in and play them every single day. So if you're gonna do this, actually do it. But nobody understands what goes into supporting these games until they're actually out. Feels like these things are made for somebody who's missing something in their life. Like, seriously, let me ask, why do you think your game is worth investing so much time and money into when there's all these other games doing the same thing but better? It doesn't matter, because the investors and CEOs are looking at the handful of live service game successes and going, well, damn, that's what the people want. Another Overwatch, Sea of Thieves, Fall Guys, Destiny. Now here's what the people actually want.
Kill me.
What the hell is this? Skull and Bones? Head and f***s? This bozo costs $70, and that's the cheapest version. And for what? Well, Ubisoft claims it's because Skull and Bones, it ain't just a game, it's 4 of them. A quadruple A title, implying this is a blockbuster release of a quality that no other video game has dare ever reached, in which players will have the look of childlike whimsy and joy on their face at what's in store for them. Look at me. Quadruple A? What does the 4th A stand for?
Anybody?
This game was announced at E3 2017. It released in 2024. And there's nothing wrong with that. This game. After being revealed as the spiritual successor to the fan-favorite Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, the project underwent many changes throughout the years, until we settled on this. A lot can happen in 7 years. You can delay your game 6 times, spend $200 million on it, receive funding from Singapore, and be contractually obligated to release the game and not cancel it. Oh, and you can make it to 2nd grade now. Ubisoft made this a live service game because they don't care. I genuinely think they crossed their fingers that some weird would end up liking this game and would spend a ton of their money on it, which would potentially net them some cash in a freak accident sort of way. Because how could anybody think this would be enjoyed in any way? This game is directionless. There's nothing worth a damn in the whole package. You sail the seas, naval battle, find some treasure. 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 Sail the seas, naval battle.
I would say it's like having another producer in the room that knows exactly what your song needs. This is co-producer, the fastest.
Holy add a talking dog or something. I don't know, mix it up! The core design element of live service games is a very obvious gameplay loop. They're designed to keep their hooks into you so you keep coming back. So many of them are pretty repetitive, but various elements help subside that repetition. Leveling up, new abilities, upgrades, collecting more and more loot, well-designed large maps, substantial content being introduced consistently, and you know what? Bless its heart, Skull and Bones does a few of these things. Shame it isn't fun to begin with. For such a big experience, it feels so hollow. Yes, there is depth. If you really want to dig into this game, I'm sure you could. But for me personally, after playing a few hours, I just don't see it. This game is boring, uninspired slop. There's barely any story, no interesting characters. For a quadruple A game, I don't think it looks good. Characters are soulless husks with stiff animation. Oh, the opening cinematic and title screen look thrown together on a budget, and you have the gall to release this at full price with this giant in-game store filled to the brim with overpriced trash costumes? This costs $10. You know what else costs $10?
This. Here you go.
But hey, maybe this live service game just isn't for me. You know, I do have different tastes from a Skull and Bones enjoyer.
I don't like Skull and Bones.
It's okay, you know, Skull and Bones folks call for Skull and Bones strokes. Maybe I'm more into regular strokes. I smell burnt toast! It's Square Enix's Foam Stars, a multiplayer game all about gunking up the environment with all kinds of messy color. Now, I know what you're thinking. Bitch, this is Crayola Scoot. Free on PlayStation consoles, a 4v4 online shooter that rips off every last element of Splatoon except the Metacritic score. Doesn't really feel like they had some great idea here. Like they must have been told, make a Splatoon-like game, just make the ink. I don't care. And they are so lucky the developers picked foam. This just isn't satisfying to play. Like, flat out, the game isn't fun. Which, yeah, that's a problem. Especially when they're pushing for all these microtransactions. When the game itself isn't very good, how can you expect anybody to care enough to invest in it like this? Well, see, I don't think Square Enix thinks all too deep about it. I think they just look at the most money they could possibly make and say, that's it! Screw morality and logic. We're Square Enix, and we deserve to be making the biggest, most popular, profitable games on the planet. Oh, we're known for classic RPGs? Well, damn it, that's not good enough. We need to capture the heart of the Western gamer. So we got Marvel's Avengers from Square Enix back in 2020, which felt like perfect timing. I mean, right after Spider-Man on PS4, during the height of Marvel's popularity. This should have been a slam dunk. But of course, it was a live service game. Why else would I be talking about it now? Like, oh, it was actually like Banjo-Kazooie Grunty's Revenge. I can imagine a world where we have an Avengers game with a single-player story mode campaign on the same level of Spider-Man PS4 that offers local and online co-op as an option. That world is not here. Our world is the one with Golden Corral. The Avengers game we got is an online-only repetitive slog so focused around hooking a bunch of sad saps on its gameplay loop to ensure they squeeze some cash out of them as they're chemically addicted at this point that just comes off as desperate and greedy. Like, this wasn't done because it made sense for Avengers. They just wanted to make the most money theoretically possible. But this backfired tremendously. This game doesn't feel designed around being a live service. It feels like they wanted to make a traditional video game, then had to restructure it halfway through. Just 3 years later, they stopped supporting Avengers and removed it from digital storefronts. Was it worth it?
Well, if the end goal was to waste nearly a decade of development and $300 million,
they f***ed it up. They wasted $200 million. Here we have Babylon's Fall, also published by Square Enix and developed by Platinum Games, announced at E3 2018, hot off the heels of the success both companies had with Nier Automata. Man, that game was damn good, and Square Enix is working with the developer again for a brand new project. Oh, god damn it! Babylon's Fall was envisioned as if Nier Automata never ended. That sounds horrible! You know what made a game like this so beloved? It ended. You had a complete experience, finally crafted to be a video game you'd play, set down, and go, well damn, I went through that. One of Automata's most iconic elements was its multiple endings. You're meant to finish the game, look back at it, and go, damn. So how do you do that but forever? You make it slow, barely involve any story, keep it incredibly generic, and tone down everything that made Nier Automata memorable and enjoyable so you can design the gameplay around quantity and not quality. See, I got this book here, and it'll last me forever. Just check how many pages it has. Nothing good lasts forever, which is why Babylon's Fall was meant to. And it couldn't even do that! Platinum Games invested in a new studio focused entirely on live service games. They bet big on this, and for it to come out the way it did says more about the game industry's cynical perspective on live service titles than anything. Like, you don't care. You just think, oh, well, this is what we need to do to make it big around here. And it just shocks me with how much time, money, and manpower is needed to pour into these projects, how they come out so damn raw. Why does this game look and run like ass? This is a PS5 game, and it looks like a Nintendo Switch version of a PS5 game. Babylon's Fall felt so cheap, cobbled together, and generic, like it was churned out by a machine. So why would you ever think this is where I'd want to spend the rest of eternity? Well, why do I keep going back to the hee-haw slot machine at the local casino? Because that pays out. Hey, quality don't mean a damn thing, as long as somebody's miserable enough to play your game. So if Babylon's Fall can just stick it out for a bit longer, give it some more time, maybe with some update. 6 signatures. Babylon's Fall was taken offline in record time, right before its first birthday. And since most live service games are dependent on an internet connection, even if you aren't playing online multiplayer, it doesn't matter. The servers are down. Babylon's Fall is no longer playable. That had to be one of the most impressive uses of fucking up I've ever seen.
That feeling when you want to buy a new ride, and it hits. You don't know if your credit score is road ready. No sweat. You can count on Credit Karma to give you an up-to-date look at your credit, so you can check your TransUnion and Equifax score updates daily and get personalized tips on how you can make them even better, all for free. Nice. Now that's the feeling of knowing your credit is good to go. Download Intuit Credit Karma to get started.
Alright, let's get this over with. Concord! One of Sony's many attempts at a live service multiplayer game since they were struggling so bad without one. You know, let's be fair here. As quality as Sony's first-party output on PlayStation consoles has been throughout the years, I think it's totally reasonable for them to notice a lack of big multiplayer exclusives in their portfolio. PlayStation's thing has primarily been single-player experiences, with third parties covering multiplayer for the most part. But that all changed with the PlayStation 5, as Sony acquired Bungie for nearly $4 billion. The developers behind one of the biggest online multiplayer games out there is now owned by Sony. That's it. They didn't make Destiny a PlayStation exclusive or any of Bungie's games. They primarily just bought them so they could teach them how to make live service games. Their knowledge alone is worth $4 billion? Did you try just asking them? I'm sure they would have told you. And with that, Sony committed to launching more than 10 live service games by 2026. This is totally just throwing all kinds of shit at the wall and seeing what sticks. Like, there's no way they ever expected all of these games to do well. Well, for some reason, Sony expected this one of the lot to do wonders. Concord, announced via a 50-second teaser during the PlayStation Showcase in 2023. This was their last game announcement before closing things out with extended gameplay of Spider-Man 2. This was directly after the reveal of Bungie's game Marathon. Like, they thought this was a big deal, even though this trailer showed nothing. Get excited, everybody. It's a development team you've never heard of, making a new game with no gameplay, character, storylines, anything shown in the reveal trailer, and it's another live service. Okay, well, I'll get the first letter of the game tattooed, but I gotta see more for the rest. As more was revealed, Concord looked to be a clone of Overwatch. Why not just play Overwatch? The only things that set Concord apart from Overwatch were derivative of other pop culture franchises like Guardians of the Galaxy or Star Wars. Yet for some reason, Sony thought this game was going to be their Star Wars. They launched it day and date on PS5 and PC for a larger player base, released a limited edition controller, hell, a bunch of random merch. Hell, they made a deal with the Amazon Prime anthology show Secret Level, where each episode is based on a different video game. Concord got its own one! They did 2 PlayStation-themed episodes. One about PlayStation as a whole, featuring God of War, Little Big Planet, Shadow of the Colossus, Helldivers, and one based entirely on Concord. Why? What was it about this IP that had so much potential that Sony reportedly sunk hundreds of millions into development, purchasing the studio who had been working on this game since 2018, going about all these cross-promotional endeavors, all while I've been waiting for a new Ape Escape game for 15 years. Concord later launched... Well, no, it didn't. It lasted 2 weeks. That is insane, especially for a game of this magnitude that received physical copies. They issued refunds, immediately halted sales of the game everywhere, and put the game offline while they would figure out what to do with it later. They shut down the studio and will never talk about this ever again.
I just read the definition of solution.
It's pretty wild how Sony went from overconfident to underconfident in a matter of days with this release. I mean, they could have made Concord free to play or given it a little makeover or something, but honestly, what's the point? It's not like Concord was a bad game or anything. It was just completely unnecessary. You have a million other games that do exactly this. So what could you possibly do to drive up interest for a game that isn't interesting? You need a hook with games like these if you're expecting a player base to come back every single day. And as serviceable and technically sound as Concord was, that's all it was. It was a functional, fine video game. And you ought to know, that don't mean it's worth playing. I was never upset at Concord's existence. I mean, have you seen how some people responded to it?
Now, I may not play video games, but I am not going to play Concord. And to prove it, that's all I'm going to talk about this year. One of the developers behind Concord tweeted back in 2015, "F*** tax season." But yeah, you know, I think that's pretty f***ed up. You know, taxes pay for a lot, especially as a father. They pay for the local schools and whatnot, so they're basically telling me to go f*** myself. Somebody who loves their son more than anything. I hope he's doing okay. Haven't seen him in a few weeks, but these are the employees Sony wants? PlayStation is failing. Believe me, I know a failing business when I see one. I've run hundreds. We need to band together to rip the stick out of the video game industry's ass and tell them these aren't the games we want. Oh, they just announced the game I want? Marathon!
Now, my problem is, how many times are we gonna go through this? Live service games are not sustainable. They can be really cool, but they are high risk, high reward, and even then, that reward is like filled with spiders. It's just so deflating to see all these soulless projects pumped out, killing the studios that are working on them, while all these companies are acting like it isn't feasible to release games any other way. It's so unfortunate because many of these products would be pretty alright if they didn't adhere to a blatant, repetitive gameplay loop. Suicide Squad actually has pretty fun movement and gunplay. Problem is, that's all it has. The game itself is so damn boring. You're doing the same thing over and over and over again. And seriously, a Suicide Squad live service game? Who the hell cares about Suicide Squad enough to keep coming back day in and day out? Oh, I gotta log my showtime in. Multiversus had so much potential as a Smash Brothers competitor, but it has so much live service funk where, oh, it's free to play, entirely online dependent, super grindy to get new characters. It gets to a point where I just don't have any fun with this at all. If this was a standard release with all characters available, some cool single player content to go through, and good multiplayer support, I would play it so much more. But that's just what live service is. Virgin repellent.
I don't know, man. I mean, live service games are meant to live on and get updates for years. What part of that sounds easy to all these companies who half-ass it? Like, how many live service successes could be classified as a fluke? Like, Marvel Rivals. You see how much stuff they pumped into this game at launch? Like, yeah, of course it's gonna do well. The hee-haw slot machine would never. Hey all, Scott here. This is money. This is a video game.
How much is a video game worth to you?
Not $60, but I'll let you draw stuff on my face for one.
This is 80.
Oh god, I need to up the ante, don't I? Okay, I'll let you shoot me too.
There's 8 billion people in the world, and 8 billion ways.
The price of video games has always been a hot debate, primarily because these are wants, not needs. That I say, why is my blood type Luigi's Mansion 2 HD? Hey, there's lots of ways to entertain yourself at affordable prices, hell, even free. What makes you so special? Well, funnily enough, looking throughout gaming history, we can see these prices aren't anything new. They're a bargain. $70 for NBA Hang Time on Super Nintendo. $75 for Mortal Kombat Trilogy on Nintendo 64. $100 for Virtual Racing on Sega Genesis. The question here isn't, are these games worth it?
The question is, are you worth them?
But see, there's gotta be a method to the madness. Why video games are priced the way they are. Cause something like this don't just happen on accident.
Oh, Butterfingers.
I've always seen big boy console games hovering around a $50 to $80 price point. 50 being the standard during the 6th generation, 60 during the 7th and 8th, and 70 and 80 during the 9th. Now, there's been some oddball stipulations with these prices. For example, it seems that the move to HD consoles warranted the jump to $60, because while the Xbox 360 and PS3 priced their games as such, the Wii, not being in HD, stuck to $50 games. But then with the jump to Wii U, now that we're in HD, boom, $60. So this is definitively what a AAA video game in HD costs. Write that down.
Righto. That statement will be proven false later.
Now, going from something like PS3 to PS4, game prices stayed the same, even for titles that were cross-generation. The PS3 version of Little Big Planet 3, $59.99. The PS4 version, same price, though it ran at 1080p, had faster load times. They offered this Day 1 edition with DLC included for no extra cost. It seems that oftentimes, the improvements included in the PS4 versions they were considered par for the course. Hey, HD video games may cost $60, but you're playing on more modern and expensive hardware. Yeah, the games both cost the same, but it only makes sense for this version to be the better value. However, once we moved from PS4 to PS5, this was where we received another price jump, but seemingly only for exclusive PS5 software. Games that had PS4 versions were $60 at most, but here we have Demon's Souls, a PS5 exclusive launch title, at $70. Didn't matter that it was a remake of a PS3 game with barely any content added. The remake is PS5 exclusive, so it's getting PS5 exclusive pricing. So what, HD games are $60, and since the PS5 can more easily do 4K, I guess that warrants $70. But if a PS5 game is also on PS4, it stays at $60. However, Sony switched up their policy. We got a few PS4, PS5 games from them where the PS4 version is $60 and the PS5 one is $70. You can play the PS4 version on your PS5, so that's an easy way to save 10 bones. But think about what you're missing out on by not spending that extra dough.
Oh my god, I'm missing out on getting rid of this thing.
That's why if you have the last generation version, you can purchase its PS5 upgrade for a measly 10 bones. Now, what do you get for that? Can you see it?
Oh, yeah, well, the PS4 version over there looked... Huh? It's actually the PS5 version? I'll just chalk it up to me being insane. I am talking to nobody after all.
Yes, there is a difference, but why do I have to pay for this upgrade when numerous PS4 games like God of War from 2018 got a PS5 update free of charge? That added the same exact kind of performance bumps that's costing me $10 whole with its sequel. And you know, while the enhancements on PS5 are very welcome and make for a more enjoyable experience with smoother gameplay, a more stable frame rate, it's not like the PS4 version runs poorly, hell, especially if you're playing it on the PS5 through backwards compatibility. I feel like we were getting bigger jumps with the previous consoles, yet we weren't paying extra like we are here. But I guess there's just this golden rule that games from this era of console cannot be $70. Unless you want to fuck around a little bit. So Activision was able to weasel $70 games onto the PS4 by bundling the $10 upgrade to the PS5 version in as a mandatory inclusion. Doesn't matter if you don't own a PS5, you're getting a PS5 game whether you like it or not. So, it seems like the only method these companies have to price games above that $60 price point on these last generation consoles is to create bundles. As long as the base package is at most $60, even if that base package isn't available for purchase, it's all good. Just don't even think about pricing a standalone game higher than that on these consoles. But Scott, you squeal, what if you stop giving a shit?
Oh, okay, under those circumstances, sure.
Nintendo Switch games priced at $70. Even when the max game price for the majority of the console's life was $60, in 2023, I discovered anything is possible. Even bullshit. The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom was priced the exact same as all these big PS5 and Xbox Series X games, even when it was running on hardware most comparable to... give me a second. Alright, now, keep in mind, it's not that I don't think Tears of the Kingdom itself isn't worth $70. Rather, up until this point, price points of most traditional video games seem to be dictated by the hardware it was on, not the game itself.
It's comparable to that.
Like, was Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart on PS5 truly worth $70 compared to all these games that were $60 just because they were on a console where that was the standard? Nintendo stated they based the prices of their games on a case-by-case basis. The case here being, can we get away with this? With Tears of the Kingdom, I mean, it made sense. Clocked in at 16 gigabytes tall, meaning they had to use a mighty expensive 32 gigabyte game card to house it all. Didn't stop The Witcher 3 from being a flat 60, even though it used a 32 gig card too. But Tears of the Kingdom is a new game, a massive game, one that reuses loads of content and assets from Breath of the Wild, a $60 game designed for a console from 2012 whose hardware is most similar to a console from 2005.
Power is everything today. Anchor Solix makes me feel safe and secure.
With the Incraft 3800 Plus system, I know that this system is big enough to actually keep everything in the house running, including the air, in order to push the smoke out.
My house is protected with this battery backup, and knowing that my sump pump is going to function appropriately.
With the Anchor Solix, we can plug in both CPAP machines, and if I have to plug in my bed if I'm having a bad night. A CPAP machine is a lifeline for me because I don't have a seizure episode.
Where I can literally roll it safely right next to my bed.
To be able to just plug and play.
It's a battery, it's not gas. The only solution I feel that's going to be reliable enough to keep my medicine or anybody's medicine that needs to be refrigerated cold
for people to have their power that they need and be able to get everything that they need done. I can surely say.
Boring.
Damn, they should be paying me to buy this. Alright, let's be fair. Did the enjoyment I got out of this game justify the price tag? I would undoubtedly say yes. The fact of the matter is, this was a special situation. You can argue it all you want, but Tears of the Kingdom could probably be considered the peak of what Nintendo Switch was capable of in terms of a game's scope. This was an impressive title, even by the standards of far more powerful consoles. If any Nintendo Switch game deserved to be $70, Mortal Kombat 1. This game didn't even release on PS4 or Xbox One. They probably considered the Nintendo Switch to be a current generation console, and thus its price point reflected that. And nothing else did. I'm confused, because the publisher Warner Brothers released Hogwarts Legacy, like their biggest release ever, on PS5 for $70 and Nintendo Switch for $60. Why do this with just Mortal Kombat? What is it, because Hogwarts got a PS4 version? So let me get this straight. This is at the same level as that, even when it obviously isn't. But this is where the line is drawn, where the quality is too damn high to continue to suffer warranting a $60 price point. See, I almost respect this more. Like, what is there to argue? It's just fucking stupid. Okay, after all that, let's take everything we've learned and try to answer this. What makes a game 70? Son of a bitch, they're 80 now. With the release of Mario Kart World on Nintendo Switch 2, $80 became the standard for cream of the crop gaming. Now I don't think there's any pitter-pattering around these video game price points anymore. Some publishers realized, what's genuinely stopping us from charging whatever we want? You want to charge $80 for your game? Do it. Nintendo's reason for why Mario Kart is $80? Because it's worth it. Well, you think they have some math equation to show you explaining themselves?
Alright, that makes sense now. Thank God you understand gibberish.
What we just went through here showcases the game industry's everlasting struggle to warrant higher price points, until eventually realizing, who cares? Now, am I enraged at the jump to $80? Will I boycott publishers not sticking to an agreed upon maximum price point? Now, respectfully, who the f am I to do any of that?
I'm awful.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of this at all, but why are we acting like purchasing a video game for children is making some sort of statement? Either you think it's worth it or you don't. It's not deep. Everybody's perception of value is different. Nobody's right or wrong. You don't need to buy that toy on the shelf, but if you refuse, you're not better than anybody who doesn't. Well, you think the guy who's judging anybody who bought Mario Kart World and all those internet comment sections is like a cool guy?
Damn, Golden Grams are stickier than they were last week.
What, so I bet if I look at all the crap you buy, it'll all check out. Everything will make perfect financial sense. Now, does that mean you're off the hook if you defend Nintendo's pricing here? Buddy, what is there to defend? Oh, I gotta stick it up for the multi-billion-dollar company. They need my help.
I will lick this for them.
Okay, what I'm saying is, let's not judge the people not buying or buying games at these prices. Let's judge the companies setting them. Because judging each and every person for buying something that you personally wouldn't, we'll be here all damn day. I personally think the only time you should shit on somebody directly due to whether they're buying this stuff or not is if they're being an ass about it. If they aren't, and they just bought this game because they wanted to play it, or they refuse because they don't agree with the price, well, who the hell are you to tell them how to spend their money? How is any of this productive? They already bought the thing, or they've already told you they don't agree with buying the thing. Why the hell do you care if they buy it or not? Focus on yourself, Bubba. Why are you defending Nintendo so much? That splotch on your arm has been there for weeks. Get off the computer and go to the damn doctor. But listen, just because some games get priced like this, doesn't mean this works as the standard moving forward. What, are you really gonna take a risk on an unproven entity when it costs that much? And you can only really charge $80 or above for a game franchise that's a known quantity with high demand. But even then, this price point isn't a sign of quality. It's more so a sign of greed. Like, they can do this, so they will do this. For example, Microsoft attempted the move to $80 games with The Outer Worlds 2, citing market conditions and rising development costs, only to go, just kidding, months later. So you acted like this price tag was 100% necessary, and when nobody was buying it, you cited market conditions again and went back to $70 games, which, mind you, many already feel is too high. This just tells me these higher price points aren't as necessary as these companies would like you to believe. But I think what's most annoying is, on top of all these price increases, many of these games are more monetized than ever before. More microtransactions, loot boxes, advertisements, doing dear god anything but paying the actual developers of these games more, all being printed on a physical video game that don't include a damn thing on the disc.
Modern gaming. Yeah, prices keep going up, and oftentimes there's no particular reason for that happening other than the desire to make more money. Which we can't blame them for that. Everybody wants to make more money. How else would I be able to do what I love most? And of course, the economy. Oh, that son of a bitch, he ruins everything. My dad lost his job. My aunt's house has been foreclosed. My cousin's been psychologically tormented by all these money issues. And Mario Kart World is $80? Jesus, just... why can't we live in the era of gaming where all of this wasn't an issue? When it was about the games, man. Not leaving the sink on at Target. Cashier sold me this game for $80. This'll teach him. His games have always been expensive, but they've never been this bad. Right?
Get Christmas bikes at Capital Cyclery. Capital Cyclery has all the makes and models. Kids bikes starting at $199.99. Capital Cyclery has e-bikes, Buzz, Specialized, and Electra bikes starting at $999.99. Get a free helmet with every e-bike purchase. Capital Cyclery has layaways and free assembly too. Capital Cyclery, the place for clothing, gear, and accessories. Shop Capital Cyclery, save big for Christmas.
Capital Cyclery, the bicycle superstore.
In Baton Rouge, Gonzales, Lafayette, and Lake Charles.
Bonjour tout le monde and welcome into my kitchen, the Gay Gourmand here, and today we're going to be getting ready for the holidays.
Well, I don't see what the problem is. I did get more for that absurd price. Plastic garbage? And shit in my pants.
Including crap has always been an excellent excuse to charge more. Oh, what, this isn't worth it? How about now? Let's take a look at the Guitar Hero and Rock Band era, when these games were taking over the world. Sure, the first few releases were more expensive than your average standalone video game at $70 on the PlayStation 2, but this was such a unique, innovative thing at the time that you could definitely understand it. Now fast forward a few years and we have Guitar Hero World Tour with just the guitar controller at $100. Now, let's keep in mind, this guitar is completely wireless, so I think a higher price point is fair enough. Plus, Xbox 360 and PS3 games were normally $60, including this one, as it was available standalone if you already had a compatible guitar controller. However, the idea of a Guitar Hero game without any controller included being valued at the same price as every other AAA release is absurd. Sure, you can play Guitar Hero with a regular-ass gamepad, but is it worth the looks on the street you're gonna get? Oh man, everybody's looking at me like I'm a freak. Damn controller! Oh, hey, at least the Wii release was $50 standalone, but the guitar bundle was still $100, and on Wii, the guitar was fully powered by your Wii remote. Now listen, I'm not gonna try and act like I know how this stuff works. I am gonna try and act like I know how to bitch about it. Shouldn't this be cheaper to produce if the Wii remote's doing all the heavy lifting here? I mean, the Xbox 360 guitar has to function on its own. This is siphoning all the wireless capabilities and power from the controller, on top of the game itself being less expensive on its own. But hey, at this point, you might as well go all in on the full-blown bundle with the microphone and drum set at $190. I mean, at nearly double the price of the guitar kit, I can't in good conscience do this. But at the same time, the drums are much bigger, more complicated. Sure, I don't think this is a good deal, but I mean, look how huge this box is. Can't say the price shocks me. However, 1 year later, here's Band Hero with all the same junk included for $200. Oh, but see, those bastards across the street at Rock Band, they got us covered. The Beatles Rock Band Value Edition. $160 for everything. They're just using the controllers from Rock Band 1 instead of the special Beatles ones, which cost money. Well, that's nice of them, offering a more affordable version that's functionally the exact same as the one costing an arm and a leg. Man, that's what arms and legs are going for these days. But at this point in time, you could nab the full Rock Band 2 bundle for 100 bones. then pick up Beatles Rock Band separately for $60, so you get everything the Value Edition gives you, plus Rock Band 2, for the same price. Hell, if you'd want to go even cheaper, the Wii version of Beatles Rock Band was priced the same as any other Wii game. Why was this game $60 on Wii? I thought standalone Wii games with no extra garbage included were $50 at most. No exceptions. I guess anything goes when you're pumping out a dozen variants of the same goddamn game in 1 year. These accessory games, man, acting like they can do whatever they want. And that might be true for a bit, especially when they're bringing a fresh, exciting idea to the table. But over time, fatigue sets in. These concepts are no longer as novel as they once were. And when prices rise like this, it becomes harder to justify, especially when numerous companies were passing out deals back then. So many controller bundles, accessories included at no additional cost. It's like you were being rewarded for buying into this crap. My grandfather got a Purple Heart. I got the Wii Play Wii Remote bundle for $50. Oh my god, at all the great prices for digital software at the time, look at this. 6 to 10 bones for PlayStation 1 games on the PS3 store. What a steal! Some of the greatest games of all time, dense with hundreds of hours of content in some cases. Same goes for all the Stone Cold classics on the Wii Shop channel. I mean, NES games were all only $5 a pop.
Put a dollar amount on me, please. I gotta know if I'm better than this.
I appreciate that Nintendo was consistent with prices. Might have been a little too consistent. Well, actually, some games were more expensive if they were never released in your country. But there's an import tax on a digital file? If anything, they should charge less. They don't even translate anything. Okay, well, what about old games over on the Xbox 360's digital store? Well, Microsoft ran a service called Game Room, a virtual arcade where you could buy tons of classic games for $3 a pop. Man, that's the cheapest yet. Check this out. I paid $3 for Activision's legendary Venetian Blinds.
Put a dollar amount on me, please.
The landscape of digital storefronts must have been a tricky thing to figure out. I mean, what do you price digital content at? In those early years, smaller, digital-only titles and classic games were the only things really on offer, and generally, these would be $5 to $15. Or whatever the hell Microsoft points are. Yeah, I don't know why this was done on Xbox 360, Wii, Nintendo DSi, using a point system in place of actual currency. Could I launder with this? At least Nintendo's USD to Wii point conversion made sense. Microsoft points? Is this math even English? But hey, Microsoft deserves some credit because they pushed the boundaries of digital storefronts and began offering full retail Xbox 360 games as downloadable releases. Games on demand. What an incredible idea, especially since you no longer have to manufacture a physical product, ship it off to retailers who then get a cut of the profit. Well, I'd assume the price point here should be the exact goddamn same, if not more expensive than buying these games at GameStop. Well, aren't I not disappointed? This initiated the age-old question. Shouldn't digital games be cheaper? I mean, sure, these days you see a ton of digital sales going on, but when they ain't, games are often just flat-out MSRP. And this was even worse back in the day. Sales weren't as common, and the 360 games available on demand were usually older releases that you could pick up for dirt cheap physically, but on the digital store, they were like $30. I remember PlayStation Vita games were generally quite a bit less expensive digitally, but for the most part, that was an anomaly. It seems that most don't want to lessen the value of their game just because it's digital. I mean, to these companies, there's functionally no difference between these two products other than this one costs you more to produce, so theoretically, you could raise the price of this, but then the retailers you're selling it at are gonna be pissed you're driving customers away from them, and you can't just tell them to go themselves because where the hell else are you gonna buy your game console? And if the standard with digital games was for them to be, say, $10 cheaper, well then that is the actual value of your product right there. And that looks fucking nasty. You ever see when new games are priced lower than usual? The response generally isn't, oh boy, what a deal. It's, Wait, what's wrong with it? Sega priced all major Sonic releases for a few years there at $39.99, starting with Sonic Forces.
Now, you cannot possibly sell genuine dog shit for $60. Especially when the market value is $40.
Sega did this due to the Sonic franchise being a bit down in the dumps at the time. So how else do you get people back in your corner? Well, sell them mediocre products priced accordingly. Well, as long as it's not charging me $60, you can do whatever you want to me, Sega. Well, eventually, with the release of Sonic Frontiers, they swapped things over to $60 to showcase how Sonic games were high-quality AAA experiences worthy of the investment. Then Sonic Superstars released a year later and was 5 hours long.
Could have been worse.
And I don't think it's fair all the time to judge a game's price by how long it takes to complete the main story. Like, there's so much else you need to consider here. The economy? That piece of shit. He's making my Sonic games suck. I mean, look back at the 90s when everything was more affordable. You got Sonic and Knuckles on the Sega Genesis for $60. Okay, but hey, Sonic and Knuckles is a special cartridge. One that locks onto Sonic 3, which released earlier that same year for $60. Yeah, these games separately are each one half of the intended Sonic the Hedgehog 3 experience. Sonic 3 on its own had like half the levels that Sonic 2 did because they were forced to put the game out early and finish it later. Yet these were still each sold at full price. Well, actually, full price back in the 90s would be, what, $70, $80, $90, $100? Argument here is, well, these were cartridges. They had to manufacture more with them, oftentimes including dedicated chips to bring you more innovative graphical effects, larger, longer experiences. Once they moved over to CDs, those were cheaper to mass produce, so these cartridges had actual excuses to be so expensive. I mean, look at Mickey Mania on SNES and Genesis compared to Sega CD.
Where were you at the boycott?
To be fair, on average, games on CDs were less expensive than cartridges. But the difference in price isn't that drastic. We're talking $5 to $10 off, or hell, sometimes there's no price difference. But hey, if cartridges cost this much, I'd take any discount I could get. Now, keep in mind, games like Phantasy Star 4, Shining Force 2, Final Fantasy 3, these were some of the biggest gaming experiences at the time of their release. You couldn't really get a Meteor package in 1994 if you tried, so higher price points make sense. But do highest price points make sense? And let's not forget about inflation. Listen, I'm not gonna act like I understand much economically, but I can do a mean Googling of inflation. Inflation is a funny little bugger because many use it to instantly prove, well, actually, as you can see, we're getting bargains these days. They were selling games for $200 in today's cash. Yeah, that's true, but man, $70 is still an awful lot of money for a piece of entertainment these days. Just because this was the value of $1 back then doesn't mean it entirely makes sense for games to be that price now. They were figuring junk out in the 90s. Video games were still a fairly new technology, and eventually this general price point was considered the standard, what people are willing to pay. Increasing it raises questions. It's the same thing for all these other entertainment mediums. The Back to the Future trilogy on VHS was $56 back in '93. That's $125 these days. What, you think 3 movies on Blu-ray is worth that much? My point is, nobody would genuinely look at a $200 game and say, well, the value of $1 is ever changing, so this is the natural price point of a video game in the current year. I can't claim to fully understand how much was too much back in the 90s, but I can claim to have heard a bunch of 40-year-olds yap about it. It seems that while everybody knew games were piss expensive back then,
Why is this expensive?
it was more accepted than it is today because everything felt a bit more justified. I mean, even if they were overcharging for Phantasy Star 4, you can bring up a bunch of reasons why it was so expensive. Mario Galaxy 1+2 on Switch being $70? There's no reason for that other than Nintendo just valuing those experiences at that price. And as time goes on, we're seeing less and less actual deals because, well, these companies don't have as much to prove anymore. Video games are now the leading form of entertainment. This is where people spend most of their money to have a good time. So an extra controller, that used to be something you had to be convinced to buy via bundles. Now, they're like, we know you're gonna buy this eventually. We don't need to give you nothing. Boom! $90 just to get greatest hits, platinum hits, player's choice releases of some of the best games at reduced prices, normally $20 a pop. Now, nobody wants to undervalue their franchises. They don't want to put their games on sale unless they absolutely have to because everybody wants their content to be seen as the best of the best. Cheap is seen as bad. The Horizon Zero Dawn Remastered is getting released at $50? Well, now we gotta take the $20 PS4 version on digital stores and double it to $40 because we need to maintain consistent brand value. And listen, I can't believe I'm mourning the lack of player's choice. I don't like the man I've become, and that's what money does to you. But as piss ugly as this is...
Why is this ugly?
You can definitely suck it up when you see the price. 20 bones for some of the best games on their respective platforms. Absolutely incredible. But I guess games at that low price just aren't possible these days. Oh. So these guys are just assholes then.
Listen, video games have always been some of the pricier forms of entertainment, and we can find an endless supply of stupid-ass price points throughout history to point at and go, see? Things have always sucked! But I think a big difference between rising prices then and now is how enough never feels like enough anymore. Prices of games aren't just high, now we're begging you to pay for the DLC, microtransactions, a subscription to play online multiplayer, subscriptions for the game itself, subscriptions in the game itself, the deluxe edition, the special edition console, which is more expensive than the standard one and doesn't include the game, extra accessories, the previous game in the series, which is still full price, the collector's edition, which doesn't include a physical copy of the game. Comes with a case for it, though. And... oh, wait, you're not buying into all this? Oh, Jesus Christ, it must be those damn developers of ours! Very rarely do I see something I consider a good deal these days. Something's either at a price point I deem fair enough, or it's absolutely overpriced. Now, I still buy a lot of stuff I think is overpriced because I have no shame. But while I'm willing to do that sometimes, it becomes harder and harder to justify as the value just isn't there with a lot of these high prices. Back then, when a game was up there in price, there was more often than not an excuse for it. Now, their excuse is that they want more money. And that just doesn't bode well for this parasocial relationship I've been working my ass off on. Well, as much as I can complain about how expensive modern gaming has become, let's take one last look at gaming prices throughout the years as everybody mourns differently. Games for the Neo Geo AES were generally $199 a piece. Same price as a Super Nintendo. Here's the thing. These games were considered arcade perfect, which is everything you could possibly ask for back then. The arcade was where you saw the latest and greatest in graphics. Then you'd go, well, damn, I gotta get this for my home console. I'm never saying words again. Neo, I lied. Geo, by comparison, gave you the same experience as the arcades, and thus was considered a luxury product. This wasn't really seriously competing with Nintendo and Sega because it was for a completely different market. Serious players only. You gotta be a die-hard enthusiast to get anything out of these games at this price, because for most consumers, you can pick up the Super Nintendo or Genesis versions of these things at a fraction the cost that, while downgraded, were more or less pretty faithful ports. Also, the Neo Geo AES itself was priced like this.
Hi, it's 1991. I can afford a Neo Geo AES and Neo Geo AES games. My name is Jesus Christ.
But hey, even if you didn't have a Neo Geo, you still had opportunities to buy games at the price points of full-blown consoles, like Virtual Racing on the Sega Genesis costing $100. I mean, look at the original arcade game released back in 1992. It would take a satanic ritual to get this to run on a Genesis.
Welcome to hell.
Okay, well, Virtual Racing definitely couldn't run on this hardware without some finagling. Yeah, that's what was done here. Hence, why this cartridge is probably more complex than a microwave. But that complexity came at a steep price for a game you could get on more powerful platforms at such a lower price. Strange how things have sort of swapped around, where a game on lesser hardware is generally not as expensive, but back then, you know how many men had to die to get this on a Genesis cartridge? Well, game development and publishing is a different beast now. Not everything is as difficult or simple as it was back in the 90s, like adding new content and tweaks to an existing package. Nowadays, you can push out a free update or not. But back then, well, we already see what they did with Sonic 3 and Sonic & Knuckles. But take a look at the whole suite of Street Fighter 2 releases. Nearly $80 for the initial SNES port. A year later, you get Street Fighter 2 Turbo for $74. Oh boy, a discount. A month later, Special Champion Edition on Genesis, also for $74, followed by Super Street Fighter 2 that next summer for $70. And guess what? Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo was already out in the arcades by the time these ports released. And for the home version of that, you'd have to pick up a Panasonic 3DO, which launched at the price of, what the f? That's a number? Now, to be fair, a lot of these crazy prices back then were definitely special cases. New games often hovered around $50 to $60 ever since the NES era. And as the years have gone by, with lower cost discs becoming the standard medium for video games, this variable pricing began to fade away, which made it that much harder for gamers to accept it later on. Resident Evil Revelations was originally announced to retail for $49.99 on the Nintendo 3DS, when the standard price of games there was $39.99.
Oh, so that's why this mob's been outside for the past 14 years.
You read comments on the message boards back then, people were livid, saying Capcom completely f***ed up on this one right here. It didn't matter that $50 was still less than most home console games were going for. It didn't matter that they had to use a 4GB cartridge for the game, which raised costs. It didn't matter that this was a full-fledged AAA Resident Evil game and the most graphically impressive thing on the 3DS. The fact of the matter is, it's $50. And handheld games can't be $50. Listen, in my opinion, this was a situation where the higher price, to me, felt justified. I'm not saying anybody should have been thrilled to buy it, but considering everything this game was, I personally thought, fair enough to this. But see, Capcom took the complaints to heart and spent months working out a deal to bring the price down $10 before its launch. And people still bitched! My god, you look at how people were talking back then, and it's like the same thing these days, but this at least seems reasonable compared to this. But what, it's just life at this point? Are we gonna look back at Mario Kart World in 10 years and go, oh, we had it so good. We bitch about prices being high compared to what they were, which we're still bitched about. But when there are loads of people willing to pay $100 to get 4 days early access to Forza Horizon 5 on PS5, I guess you can just price your games at whatever the early access? The game is 4 years old! The prices that most video games are at isn't necessarily a representation of their actual value. It's the highest price point they think they can get away with. But even though these companies set the prices, it's up to you at the end of the day to decide if they're worth it or not. You can't control what other people buy or if they think a price is worth it or not. But who the hell cares? Your opinion is worth its weight in gold. That's the only thing that matters here. If you thought Resident Evil Revelations was a sham at $50, I can disagree, but I can't say you're wrong. You decide if this game is worth its price point, not the company. Hell, you can decide if it's free or not depending on how far you're willing to go.
Hey y'all, Scott here. One man's trash is another man's...
As modern professionals,
Garbage. What makes a video game a good deal? Well, it's subjective. I don't know why you wrote Big Fangs, but I can't say you're wrong. But it's good to know your limits, what the bare minimum kind of product you'd buy at a certain price is. If I'm gonna buy a game for $70, well, it's gotta have this, or I'm not budging. But many don't seem to understand how, just because they won't buy anything with the letter B in it, that doesn't mean I abide by their logic. Either way, I'm safe. It's entirely up to each individual how they spend their money. If you want to buy The Last of Us Part 1 on PlayStation 5, yeah, I mean, there's worse ways to spend $70.
Here, take my money.
So then what do I consider good deals and bad deals in gaming? Well, to truly understand, we need examples, and if we don't get examples, we'll make examples. After over a decade of $60 being the norm for the standard blockbuster video game, with the introduction of the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series consoles, we saw that price increase by $10. Oh no, my gordita crunch money! Hey, listen, I ain't opposed to $70 video games, or how much time you get out of these things, and that's still a fine value. It cost me $15 to see Dumbo, and I still haven't made back that investment. But the games they chose to be some of the first with that standardized price,
it's the same goat I've seen every day for a nickel.
I'll give them 9,000 today.
You'd expect games like Forza Horizon 5, Resident Evil Village, Guardians of the Galaxy, Elden Ring to maybe be $70, but no. Demon's Souls, a remake of a PlayStation 3 game from 2009 that launched at $60, a part of the same lineup of games from the same developers, Elden Ring, which retailed at $60.
Oh, I'm sorry. The chef is out. He made all the sense around here.
Again, $70 games, I'm fine with. I mean, have you seen the prices of games from the 90s? Mortal Kombat Trilogy on Nintendo 64 was $75, and you know why they went lower?
The cash register can't hold that much money.
Well, game prices were the way they were back then due to how much technology had to be crammed into these game cartridges, many of which had unique hardware included in order to achieve maximum, here you go. So, yeah, when you have to specially produce chips to put inside each and every game, that'll drive up the cost. Though with the transition to discs, those you didn't have to do that with. Just order a pack of blank CDs from Big Lots and you're set. Those were cheaper to mass produce, thus games got a fairly standardized price during the PlayStation 2 days of 50 bones. That increased to 60 with the Xbox 360 era, and moving into the PlayStation 5 generation, now we have to pay 70 for some of the biggest $10 games. The Last of Us Part 1, a 2022 remake of a game from 2013 that received a remaster in 2014, retailing for $70 US. Why is this so expensive? Because the toxins released spending $70 are far healthier than burning it. This is what I'd consider to be a bad deal in gaming, alright? Let's just use this chart here to compare all releases of The Last of Us. In 2013, you got the initial release for $60, considered Game of the Year by millions, one of the best stories told in all of gaming alongside incredibly tightly designed gameplay. And that's just the single player campaign. You got multiplayer as well, plus a downloadable single player prequel for an extra $15. The original 2013 release was well worth it in every sense of the word, if you say it really fast. But with the title releasing within the final year of the PlayStation 3's life before the PlayStation 4 took over, those who didn't already have the console weren't super willing to invest in one. Thus, 1 year later, The Last of Us Remastered for PlayStation 4 launched for $50. Improved visuals, frame rate, the DLC is included in the package, free of charge. Plus, there's a new photo mode, features utilizing the PlayStation 4 controller. This isn't the most exciting remaster, but it was a necessary one, giving the PlayStation 4 user base the chance to play one of the greatest games of all time in the most definitive way possible at a discounted price that would continue to drop over time. 8 years later.
This game better look like Satan's worst nightmare. It looks like he just had a bad dream.
You filming?
Yep.
I'll post it.
Try rolling your wrist, dude.
Namir, lace up. Second line tomorrow.
Okay, coach.
Shoot it!
With Dupixent, stay ahead of your child's moderate to severe eczema with clearer skin and less itch. The #1 prescribed
The Last of Us Part 1 is a remake of the 2013 game, not a remaster like the 2014 game, and putting them all side by side, wow, you can tell. To be fair, during the cutscenes and other in-game moments, the differences can be more drastic than you think. They truly did rebuild this game, but a lot of the differences feel like just that. Not necessarily an upgrade, just it looks different now. Going from the original PS3 game to Part 1 on PS5 is a huge step up. But from remastered on PS4, like there should have been a bonus feature in Part 1, a fucking bird that tells you when something's different. If anything, they took more stuff out with the exclusion of the multiplayer mode. And yes, the game looks better now, but The Last of Us Remastered still looks better than 90% of the games releasing these days, and you can play that on PlayStation 5. And how many times can they keep just enhancing graphics on a game and expect people to care? There's one more pixel on the screen in The Last of Us Part 1 too. Well, there is more content. Yeah, hopefully it's obvious why I think that's a bad deal, though I can understand why some people have no problem spending that kind of cash on this kind of game. What you spend your money on is your own damn business.
Until the government gets involved.
Hey, I guarantee the people who complain about this just bought the stupidest goddamn thing ever.
This is why I guarantee it.
Blizzard Arcade Collection. a handful of games developed by Blizzard before they changed their mind on going bankrupt. A solid little retro distraction with some cool bonus features and variations of the games included. They actually went in and created definitive versions of these Super Nintendo games, combining elements from other console versions into one, which is awesome. For $20, this is a great way to play these vintage games. One problem, these games were available for free on Blizzard's website.
Well, not really free. They cost the guilt of not buying the arcade collection.
Now, let's be fair here. The versions of the Lost Vikings and Blackthorn Blizzard has available on their website are the DOS versions, and Rock and Roll Racing is more of a cut-down demo of the full game with loads of content missing. The arcade collection contains the console versions of these games, plus the definitive editions, which have loads of value to them. Plus, later on, they released a free update putting 2 games that aren't on Blizzard's website for free in the collection. I think the initial thought of, oh, they're releasing a collection of games for $20 when they're also offering PC downloads of the games included for free, what a crock, is understandable, but they included a lot more than those free versions ever will. And it's not like they removed the free downloads after they released Arcade Collection, so this, I wouldn't say it's a bad deal, though I wouldn't say it's a necessarily good one either, especially when it initially launched with only 3 titles. I'd say this is wholeheartedly an deal. But that just begs the question, what do I consider a good deal in gaming?
I stole this.
When the Sega Dreamcast was doing really bad, like pretty bad, really bad, a deal was offered where if you signed up for Sega's online service, SegaNet, for $22 a month on a 2-year plan, you'd get a Dreamcast console. You just get one. I mean, you get a free video game console by signing up for a service you'd possibly sign up for once you buy said video game console. It's like, sure, I'll sign up for PlayStation Plus, and then they give you a whole ass PlayStation 5. Like, hey, I wouldn't complain, but this tactic seems backwards. You'd expect if there would be any deal, you'd get the online service for free after buying the console, not getting the console for free after buying the online service. But hey, I'd be an ass for saying this is anything but a good deal. Oh wow, f this guy. It goes without saying though, you can't do a deal like this without vibes of an mentality. And within a few months, Sega announced the deal didn't work. But a good deal is still a good deal, even if it's born out of a company on the verge of bankruptcy. It's our duty as consumers to take advantage of others' misery, even our own. The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim Anniversary Edition on Nintendo Switch for $70. Here's a picture of that, and here's a picture of something not worth $70.
Oh, this was just a waste of ink.
Forget The Last of Us on PlayStation 5 for $70. How about Skyrim on Switch for that price? I mean, the $70 price transition was pretty much exclusively for those new consoles introduced. The Switch was still sitting pretty with a $60 price cap for most games. But let's roll out the red carpet for another damn version of Skyrim. To be fair, this is a bundle. The base Skyrim game for $60 plus the Anniversary Edition DLC upgrade, which would normally cost $20 standalone. Now only $10 via this method. Now the DLC itself, I mean, this Anniversary Edition originally launched alongside the PS5 and Xbox Series versions of Skyrim in November of 2021, being offered as an upgrade on top of another upgrade. It came to Nintendo Switch out of nowhere a year later and includes new content.
Oh, they ain't kidding.
For $20, this is incredibly weak DLC. It's a bunch of items and gear, some quests. I mean, decent enough add-on content, but for $20? On top of the $60 for the base Skyrim game, which is $10 more than the superior special edition on the other more powerful consoles, an Anniversary Edition doesn't even come alongside any next-gen upgrades like it did on PS5, which kind of warranted the release of Anniversary Edition to begin with. But hey, Anniversary Edition on Switch does improve the graphics slightly, and now the game runs worse than it did without the DLC. God, after that, I need something slightly more positive. Well, I did say slightly. Super Mario 3D All-Stars, a compilation of Super Mario 64, Sunshine, and Galaxy on Nintendo Switch for $60. Now, due to a lack of bonus features and other games included, many considered this to be overpriced. Well, let's do some math here. When Nintendo sold Nintendo 64 and Wii games on the Wii U's Nintendo eShop, they valued Super Mario 64 at $10 and Super Mario Galaxy at $20. And while they didn't sell GameCube games, we could do some quick math and figure they'd sell Super Mario Sunshine for $15. Nintendo wouldn't do this to me. We are really close. We talk all the time.
This is Nintendo customer support.
My DS won't turn on.
Well, this price accounts for the baseline, just the game experience for the most part. 3D All-Stars enhances the games. If you squint, Mario 64 got the least attention here. You could compare it to the standalone Wii U release, and that one you could save and load suspend points whenever you wanted. You can't do that here, though the game looks and controls far better in 3D All-Stars, and it's interestingly based on a Japan-only release of the game, now including Rumble support. Sunshine is now in widescreen with an increased resolution, Galaxy can now be played with a standard controller, and all games can be played portably, which you could warrant a price increase for that. On paper. That's not a feature of the game, that's a feature of the Nintendo Switch. If you list portability as a feature of a Switch game, what are you doing? The Xbox version of this game is more expensive because it has the feature of using an Xbox controller to play it. The bonus content is pitiful in this collection. Basically just the soundtracks of the 3 games, a feature that was included because no thought had to be put into it. At the end of the day, considering everything that's been included and the enhancements to each game, the value of this collection to me is around $50 to $55, which when it retailed for $60, I don't really think that's anything to freak out about. If you're somebody who refuses to pay a couple bucks more than what you think the imaginary value of a product is, you're probably fucking awesome, which means you would love Gears of War Ultimate Edition on Xbox One, a $40 remaster of Gears of War on Xbox 360.
I only have $5. But I just found out taking out a loan is free!
For a series with 4 entries on the same console, you'd expect to see a Gears of War collection for that price. Just remastering the first game feels like something's missing here. Well, lucky us, Microsoft included the Xbox 360 versions of all these titles for free, playable on Xbox One, even the first game. Oh man, I always wanted to play that! I mean, Gears of War Ultimate Edition is a good remaster, though with how readily available the first game was and how the other games weren't initially included, I'd say this was originally an deal. Though after they ran this promotion, it became a damn good one. It only lasted from August 2015 to December 2015, but hey, if you have a problem with that, take it up with the passage of time. Ha, wanna hear another bad deal in gaming? Mass Effect 3 Special Edition for Wii U. Why did I buy this?
Because it's special. And what makes it special is I f***ed up all by myself.
A launch title for Wii U, the 3rd entry in the Mass Effect series, a series of games that really benefits from playing each entry to move your save file over from one to another. Of course, Mass Effect 1 was only on Xbox 360, so when Mass Effect 2 released on PlayStation 3, they incorporated an interactive comic that enabled you to cruise through an abridged Mass Effect 1 story and make the decisions you would have made that could alter how your story goes in Mass Effect 2. But then they eventually released Mass Effect Trilogy on Xbox 360 and PS3, bundling all games together while also putting Mass Effect 1 out on PlayStation for the first time. That launched during the holiday of 2012 for $59.99. Mass Effect 3 Special Edition launched on Wii U that same holiday for $59.99. Okay, well, it's Special Edition. There's gotta be something special about it. That's not special. Funky Barn's on it too. Sure, you get a new interactive comic. A bunch of the DLC is included, plus the M597 Landon weapon. It's only in the Wii U version.
You know what else is only in the Wii U version? A good reason to buy Mass Effect 3.
But they couldn't bother to price this game at like at least $50? Bringing the trilogy over would take 3 times the work. This game was so cheap on the other platforms because on Xbox 360, it was a matter of putting discs in cases. And on PlayStation 3, they just had to bring over the original Mass Effect and that's it. So I get why this bundle didn't come to Wii U. But why was it the same damn price? Ooh, well, Wii U gamepad functionality. Yeah, because doing this playing Mass Effect 3 feels badass.
The button hurt my finger.
That's not to say the Wii U had no good deals. Take a look at Bayonetta 2. That launched with the entire first game on a disc included for free. And they had to port the whole game to Wii U. It's not like Mass Effect Trilogy where they just threw the old discs in the package. No, they just understood how Bayonetta 1 was never on Nintendo platforms, and with Bayonetta 2 being a Wii U exclusive, well, what better way to sell people on that than include the first game for free. Okay, well, I'm out of ideas.
So I've seen a lot of things. Many a tear has to fall.
crazy thing. They continued this tradition when the game was re-released on Nintendo Switch, this time with a download code for Bayonetta 1 included. Will always be a good deal. I mean, 16 characters included for free? Best I could do is 15. Nintendo Land included in the Wii U Deluxe set? That's a $60 value for only $50 more than the basic one. Getting one of 4 free games with Mario Kart 8 around launch, the titles like Captain Toad Treasure Tracker, Kirby and the Rainbow Curse, Yoshi's Woolly World, and Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze all retailing for less than $60? Nintendo was handing out some pretty solid deals during this generation. But then, it happened. In the era of the Nintendo Switch, Nintendo wasn't too interested in cutting consumers a deal. Case in point, the Switch version of Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. $50 on Wii U when it released as a brand new video game, discounted to $20 in 2016. Nintendo Switch version releases in 2018 for $60.
What did they add to this version? The goddamn Pope? Okay, so what's the problem again?
Well, outside of a new playable character, Funky Kong, which is basically just an easy mode, Tropical Freeze on Switch features less choppy loading screens when entering a level and a new snout. $60, they should charge monthly for this. Tropical Freeze is truly one of the greatest games of all time. The Nintendo Switch version is the best out there. And in a vacuum, it's worth $60. There is $60 worth of an experience here, but when it launched at $50 and was discounted to $20, and then this version comes out at $60 with barely anything new added, I'm sorry. It feels like these companies try to lure you in with a good deal, then eventually just rip everything from you because they already got you. PlayStation Plus and Xbox Live Gold. You'd sign up for these to play online multiplayer, but as a bonus, you get free games every month. For $60 a year, most people are okay with that for online multiplayer alone. Adding a handful of free games on top of that? That's just icing on the cake. The cake is nails. Yeah, that price for online multiplayer alone is a bit much, which is why all these incentives are being thrown in to keep customers happy. Like removing the need for an Xbox Live Gold subscription to access Netflix on Xbox consoles. That's incentive. But I'll gladly take a few free games a month for doing nothing. Look at this lineup of content from the month of March in 2020. The Batman the Enemy Within, Shantae Half Genie Hero, Castlevania Lords of Shadow 2, Sonic Generations? According to Xbox, that's nearly $100 worth of value. Hell, if they offer just these games for the year, you're making your money back on the Xbox Live investment. Damn, if that's the kind of deal we got in March of 2020, then what about in November of 2022?
Thank you?
It's really hard to complain considering you're paying for online multiplayer and the games are a bonus, but what the hell is this? Obviously, a service like Xbox Game Pass is where a lot of the real value lies. I mean, access to hundreds of games for a monthly price. I'm not specifying because it depends on where you sign up for the service. Buy a ton of Pop-Tarts, it's free.
But that's what it comes down to. Do you value what the product is giving enough to warrant paying what they're asking for? Or do you just want to slime yourself around the price? The value of games is completely subjective. Just because I don't find a game to be a good deal doesn't mean you should or shouldn't buy them. Hell, you can find a game to be a bad deal and still buy it. As long as you have the money to spend and your reasoning is, I want that, that's all you really need. But it's still interesting to dissect what you personally find to be worth it. So I ask you to think about it yourself. What do you think is a good or bad deal in gaming? And before you say Nintendo customer support is a bad deal, they hung up on me for the 5th time today asking to replace my DS. I know. Ah, hey y'all, Scott here, and don't mind me, I'm just making some adjustments to the calendar, or legally speaking, tampering with evidence. Ever since I missed out on buying Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes on launch day, I've made it a goal to make sure every day is launch day. Because we can't just let the day one buyers have all the fun, look at them out there. So, from here on out, whenever you decide to buy the game, you'll get the satisfaction of knowing you bought it on day one. Which stinks for me because I'm never gonna buy it. There's a certain level of pride that comes with being a gamer. I never said it was a high one. And many attribute their gaming accomplishments towards the real-life penis. You're not a true fan. You didn't beat Horizon Forbidden West on very hard and easy the week before the game released. So much of gaming discussion is based around, oh yeah, well this is why I'm a bigger fan. See, I'm better than you because I don't have anything else going on. So why not monetize and encourage that kind of behavior? I can get behind that. Let's go even further. If your aunt died last night, you get a green case. Day one editions. You know what that means? I'm a sucker. These are some of the more peculiar facets of modern gaming, with their entire purpose being for bragging rights?
Power is everything today. Anchor Solix makes me feel safe and secure.
With the Anchor F3800 Plus system, I know that the system is big enough to actually keep everything in the house running, including the air, in order to push the smoke out.
My house is protected with this battery backup, and knowing that my sump pump is going to function appropriately.
With the Anchor Solix, we can plug in both CPAP machines, and if I have to plug in my bed if I'm having a bad night. A CPAP machine is a lifeline for me because I don't have a seizure episode.
Where I can literally roll it safely right next to my bed.
So you'll be able to just plug and play.
The first time I personally remember these coming to light was during the Xbox One's launch. How did Microsoft take attention away from the competition? By giving us shit box art. The Microsoft published titles, Dead Rising 3, Forza 5, and Rise Son of Rome, all received Day 1 2013 editions as a way to commemorate the console's launch. Foil silver backgrounds. Yeah, that's so much better than art. And to be fair, there was a part of me that wanted these editions of the games. I mean, there's a reason first print releases of products are often coveted as the most valuable. So to have the games denote that, not only with a banner, but special box art as well, it just makes these even more collectible feeling. Emphasis on feeling. Yeah, so your reward for waiting out in the November 2013 cold to buy your Xbox One is shittier box art and deprecating value. Well, these releases do come with bonus DLC items, and it does feel pretty cool to own these and say, I was there since the very start 2 weeks ago. But I think the bigger deal was the Day 1 edition Xbox One consoles. Right at launch, you could get this system with a special edition controller and an exclusive achievement on your Xbox Live profile. Wow, so this is what it must have been like to own an Xbox One at launch. I'm not gonna lie and act like this wasn't a smart move by Microsoft. I mean, if you're buying a console at launch, you already have control issues. Couple that with such minimal additions like 3 lines of text on a controller and a digital achievement that says, you f***ed up.
I sure did.
And you just ensured that at least one person who wasn't originally going to buy the system bought it because they didn't want to miss out on owning the limited Day 1 edition. Oh my god, it's so fucking cool, and by proxy, I'm so fucking cool. Microsoft would continue this Day 1 tradition, this time with simply games on their launch dates, incentivizing people to buy the games the first chance they get. These companies were already trying to find ways to avoid customers buying used games around this time, one scheme being to lock the online multiplayer behind a digital code. Buy the game brand new, enter the code in, and you're golden. Buy the game used, you run the risk of the code already being redeemed or just flat out not being in the box, and thus, if you want to play online, you have to pay an extra 5 or so bones for the privilege of using your product. Thankfully, this practice became less and less used as the years went on, so what replaced it? Just because it's not as bad doesn't mean it's not stupid.
It's like pitting Satan against some worms. Like, yeah, I don't like either, but when it comes down to it, one is truly fucking despicable, and the other is just the Prince of Darkness. Day 1 editions are just kind of weird to me. They're everywhere, and most big name titles these days has something akin to it, and it's just a trend I find interesting. So, let's dissect the method to the madness and see if any of these Day 1 editions are worth being early to the party for. I'm a true fan.
Before we dive into these, I have one major question. When does the term Day 1 edition or launch edition become obsolete? Spider-Man Miles Morales has been out for years at this point, and basically the only version I ever see for sale on PlayStation 5 is the launch edition. And the ultimate launch edition. Oh man, is my big or too big? Hell, a game like Shantae Half Genie Hero released on Nintendo Switch with a special Day 1 edition, a year after the Nintendo Switch version launched. Half a year after Day 1. So let's just say this title means the first print of the game, not necessarily specifically Day 1, though that would be something if this title actually meant something. I feel like it would instill a much greater connection between the customer and the game if this variant was truly only available on launch day. Instead, these copies flood stores for sometimes years. Now, obviously, printing a copy of the game that's only available on one day isn't practical, but hey, they call these launch editions for a reason. They want to dig their claws into your emotions. When you look at your copy of Ratchet & Clank and it says launch edition, they want you to say, I was there. That creates incentive for you to buy your next game at launch, and the next game, and the next game. This whole thing is just a mind game. Well, if we're being emotionally manipulated, might as well see what's in it for us.
I love you. You look less fat today.
Most launch editions come with a few bonus DLC items, nothing crazy. Costumes, cars, weapons, you name it. Anything that's cool but superfluous enough to be a giveaway incentive. Listen, they love us, but not enough to like us. It's always some of the most whatever DLC imaginable. Like Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart's launch edition just gives you a weapon and armor set early. Like, you can still get them in the game through natural progression, but because you bought the game first, you don't have to work for them. I love this game so much, I'm willing to buy it at launch so then I can automatically get items so I don't have to play it as much. This is tough because I want to criticize this launch bonus for being stupid, but it's not locking content behind a paywall for anybody, which makes this very commendable. And stupid, it's fucking stupid. Hot Wheels Unleashed Day 1 Edition, because grandma had to wait. Oddworld Soulstorm Day 1 Edition on Xbox, and No More Heroes 3 Day 1 Edition on PlayStation. Once again, months after Day 1. Some of these do include more than just DLC though. Oddworld features a metal case on the Day 1 Edition for Xbox, which was the same metal case on the Day 1 Odd Edition for PlayStation. Well, I did have to make sure.
This time, we've found the answer. When creativity and AI merge, every gap is gracefully bridged. Subprojects, dual timeline editing, source and timeline preview editing, and your favorite features. Filmora gives you the freedom to immerse fully in your craft. Wondershare Filmora, powered by AI. Edit as an expert.
Now, Dark Souls 3's Day 1 Edition acts more as a special edition than a traditional launch edition, coming with the full game soundtrack on CD, which, yes, this is something fitting for fans willing to buy the game Day 1. But they also denote having an outer sleeve as a Day 1 Edition feature. Be grateful. A digital strategy starter guide is also included, and exclusive to the Xbox One release is a full download code for the original Dark Souls. You'd think that would make this the definitive version to get. 19 sold? Very cool release here. If all launch editions were like this, I'd see absolutely nothing to complain about, but thankfully, we live in reality. The launch edition of Sonic Colors Ultimate. Now, why is this box so thick? Why do include the Baby Sonic keychain from the Sonic the Hedgehog live-action movie in 2020, of course?
You sure there isn't a Dark Souls 3 soundtrack in here?
What does this have to do with Sonic Colors? This belongs with the Sonic movies Blu-ray, not some completely unrelated remaster of a Wii game from 2010. This was obviously thrown in to get rid of excess stock from promotions for the film while trying to make the game more enticing on release day. It was a win-win for Sega, and a loss in terms of space on my shelf. This is one of the most obnoxiously large game boxes I own, considering what comes in it. Yes, a keychain? Error. Sega's been doing the whole bonus edition at launch stick for a while, and honestly speaking, I'm kind of over it. It's hard to complain because these games aren't any more expensive than if they didn't come with all this garbage, but I'm just tired of buying a Sega game at launch and then having to deal with where to put my new trinkets. Puyo Puyo Tetris similarly came with a keychain though. That at least was specifically for that game. Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania and Sonic Mania Plus received art books, which are absolutely beautiful and great inclusions, but they're just clumsily packed next to the outer sleeves. Makes it annoying to put on a shelf because every time you take the game out, you have to deal with the art book rattling around in there. This is even more irritating with the Nintendo Switch versions of these games. Since those game cases are much smaller, like putting this on my shelf with the rest of my Switch games with the outer sleeve looks dumb. Taking the outer sleeve off and putting that somewhere else looks dumb. You know what? Life looks fucking dumb. The Japanese release of Sonic Mania Plus is so much better, considering all of this and then some, including the game's soundtrack on CD, are bundled in a box, making it so much easier to store. You don't have to worry about the art book getting ripped up from just laying here. Other launch editions do this, where they just include the bonuses just stuffed into the sleeve like this. It's just irritating to me. Like, you couldn't have designed these materials to just be, like, that smaller. I just want this junk included in the game case itself, not like this. I have to deal with it every time I pull the game out this way. Which is why Sega should take notes from Sega. Valkyria Chronicles 4 Launch Edition comes with a controller skin. Easy addition, kinda cute bonus, doesn't add any girth to the package, perfect. And it's included right alongside your other launch bonus, the Japanese voices. Why is this a launch bonus? This is just something that should be in the game automatically. Imagine if they locked Spanish subtitles behind pre-orders. The Sonic Forces bonus edition should have given you the ability to use the left button on the menu. This one was very similar to Valkyria Chronicles, controller skin and DLC add-ons, so the latter was relegated to just custom character costumes, and honestly, that's just what most launch editions offer. It's an easy and painless way to incentivize you to buy at launch, so these can often be in addition to various other SKUs of the product on day one. Persona 5 Royal had the regular edition, then the launch edition, which included a steelbook and a theme for your PS4.
I don't need a launch edition for that.
Then the Phantom Thieves edition, including everything from the launch edition plus more, and then the Resident Evil 3 edition. And that's not even scratching the surface of the digital version. You have the digital edition, digital deluxe edition, digital ultimate edition. The fact that so many modern games need to have articles and charts whipped up to explain the differences between each version is ridiculous. Especially when the launch edition is still being sold while the regular edition is then introduced. What am I supposed to make of this? Publishers have milked the edition game dry, and when day one editions were introduced, that was just the beginning. How can we go further?
What day is it?
Call of Duty Advanced Warfare had a special Day Zero edition, meaning if you bought this version, it would come out a day before the actual release date. Well, then that isn't the actual release date. It's like when the PlayStation Vita had a first edition bundle that released a week prior to the actual release date. I hate to break it to you, but I don't think that can be considered the actual release date anymore. Oh, and we can always circle back to Sonic Colors Ultimate. Early access by pre-ordering the Digital Deluxe Edition. Yeah, I got early access 11 years ago!
Day one editions, launch editions. They're tactics by these companies to get you in at the very start. And pay full price, help them achieve record-breaking numbers in that quarter while having to deal with the growing pains of playing a game at launch with all the bugs and glitches that come with. Proceed to pay for all the DLC and expansions that come later down the line, all for the game to end up rotting in the bargain bin for $20 while a complete all-in-one edition releases with all the bugs and glitches fixed and all the paid DLC included for free. But damn it, it's worth it. I'm not saying these things are bad or anything. I just think it's interesting how common they've become and how little I think it all matters. The fact I can walk into Best Buy months and months and months after Horizon Forbidden West launched and still buy the launch edition, which the only difference between that and the standard edition is a little bit of text at the top and a free DLC costume, I feel like the purpose of a launch edition is kind of lost at that point. So, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna let some video game company push you around and tell you when to buy your games? Because where I'm from, every day is Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes launch day. And I don't sleep because of it.
Hey y'all, Scott here. I'm a gamer.
And if I learned anything from being a gamer, it's that I'll never learn. And if I gained anything from being a gamer, it's a lack of creativity. After my diagnosis today, I decided to stop any non-gaming activities to bask in Hot Topic. See, now you know I play video games because it's spread to my chest. Playing video games is hard work. That's why the term gamer exists. Because we all looked at doctors and said, we need a word too. So we have graphic t-shirts locked and loaded. There's no turning back now. I should dye my hair. I'm thinking Xbox Blue. Now that everybody can tell I play Donkey Kong, I'm ready for some new equipment. So I got these headphones. The cat ears distract you from my misery. Here's a new keyboard. You know, gamers type resignation letters too. This one has all kinds of colors involved. I should dye my hair. You know, the longer I game and the gamer I game, the more I realize, this isn't a game. I need to start taking things seriously.
I've gotten a lot of reports of disruptions in the classroom.
South Park, new episodes now streaming on Paramount Plus. Loaded.com. Get the biggest game releases of the year at the best prices. Enjoy incredible savings with up to 35% off new releases. Loaded. Pay less.
Welcome to How I'll Be Remembered. This is a DX Racer Chair, the remarkably comfortable gaming experience, which is a huge upgrade for me as I normally game with, this knife up my ass. Now, thanks to my better half, I can game as any respecting gamer should. A shill. I love my DX Racer, almost as much as you should love hearing me say that. Just check out this before and after of my ass. And as a gamer, I should really prioritize what comes out of that thing.
I don't think it's physically possible to say, I play Dig Dug, I have colon cancer. But as a gamer, anything is possible. This is G Fuel. The G stands for, guess what the G stands for? There's so many different flavors, like Knuckles and a tote bag. In the end, I went with Pepsi and the pickleball set. Oh, it's like coffee. Oh, you gotta put it in a liquid. I chose milk. And with that, I am officially over the limit as to what's legally considered gamer. One problem. Where are the video games? Well, lucky me, you, and the general population, us gamers have what scholars refer to as we can find video games. This is League of Legends, the world's biggest escort. I forgot to finish the P. Esports are a big deal. I mean, it's all I care about. Which is why I haven't treated this wound in months. I've gone to every match, I get season tickets every year. You'd be hard pressed to find somebody who has an esports poster as much as I do. Now I've noticed that professional gamers are never playing single player console games. It's always the free to play PC stuff, streamed to an audience of number. Which is why I've created a twitch.tv account. Now all I need to do is nail gamer lingo. Let's play League of Legends. So, wow, that was enough for my internet stardom to blossom into cult leadership. Look at all my new fans. They'll defend anything I do. Watch. This has opened up a world of possibilities for me as a gamer. Like getting my very own controversies.
I didn't know it was a slur, I just thought it was an insult.
But I can also start collaborating with other streamers, such as Vinaigrette, Gigafink, Redacted, Big Stinky, Stinky, Redacted, and Squump.
I am horrified and technically disgusted by the actions of Squump. I will never play Minecraft with him again.
Now that I've made apologies and they seem sincere, companies can sleep well at night working with me. Opera GX, the web browser for gamers. Now all I need is a laundromat. I love how this browser is designed specifically for my needs. My needs being spyware. Look at this. I have all these quick tabs on the side to access vital info, like my network speeds and the latest Twitch streams. I can multitask like never before, which is great because us gamers don't have time to manually switch apps. Just look at my scheduled t-shirt. Oh, while I read my latest summons, I can tune into the latest Gigafink streams. No, never mind. I noticed many fellow gamers are sponsored by Opera GX, much like how many are sponsored by G Fuel. That was my own way of saying that was pretty fucking good. And sure, much like how Opera GX has privacy issues, G Fuel may cause cancer. Never say us gamers don't suffer, especially when we get paid to do so.
We don't ask for much, just RGB lighting and... Nope, that's it.
I never said gamers couldn't be lonely. I said they couldn't do anything about it. So let that loneliness fuel your gamer instincts. I may have nobody, but I can play a mean Luigi's Mansion 3. And hey, I found a great workaround. If I ever get lonely, I'll just keep myself company by buying myself another computer monitor. This is great! I can game on one screen while having a couple dozen more! Bought a Stream Deck. What is a gamer? Obviously one who games, you may say, though I think it goes much deeper than that. Are you angered easily by those better and worse than you? Is your personality defined by leaning into one hobby so much that unhealthy habits are considered quirks others just have to accept about you? Do you need to have all the options in the world for maximum productivity when you don't even have more than one thing to do at a time? Look, I have this button open up Twitch. Damn it! You know, most of these products are marketed towards gamers as if they're a unique subset of human being that needs very specific things to breathe properly. I don't think I need to prove how gamer I am with all this. Just because I play Kirby Star Allies doesn't mean I need to buy an overpriced, uncomfortable chair. I love video games, but I'm not gonna let that define me. I am so much more than that. I also suck at pickleball.
Modelo, the mark of the fighter.
Hey y'all, Scott here, and it's time to mosey on over the entire galaxy to discover the world of video game gimmicks. Time to set coordinates for numbers, and lots of them. Well, it looks like we're getting a transmission from the planet Wagwan. Oh, please God, help! I don't want to look like a jackass playing Wii music! Oh God. It looks like this is what happens when gimmicks go too far.
Many call them intrusive, unnecessary, stupid, and dumb. They've plagued video games for as long as they've existed, and for at least the next 10 minutes. Gimmicks are crucial in business to ensure differentiation. You have to stand up from the crowd and offer something that sounds compelling enough to get consumers to bite. Take, for example, Toys R Us's new gimmick is insane price cuts, and people are flocking to the stores. They should do these sales more often. The term gimmick has often been associated with video games, especially within the past decade or so with the introduction of... It's an easy way to get people either not initially interested in a particular game or video games in general to bring a copy up to the register. I think most people started throwing around the term in association with video games when a certain game console that goes by the alias of I set Nintendo back 5 years came out. But gimmicks have been a part of video games ever since they became a commercial product. The first game console, the Magnavox Odyssey, basically was just a bunch of variations of Pong with transparent overlays you put on a screen to simulate graphics and different game genres. Gimmick. The Power Glove for the NES, motion controlled mitten. Gimmick. Wireless controllers. Gimmick. Adding new power-ups to games. Gimmick. Anything new added to a product or a reason to buy it is technically a gimmick, which definitely negates a lot of the negative connotations the term has. They can be incredibly beneficial. For crying out loud, a gimmick saved the video game industry. Rob the Robot was packed in with the NES at launch to convey that it wasn't a video game console after Atari mucked out hard. Rob was a gimmick to showcase how the NES was a toy. And it worked. The Nintendo 64 introduced the Rumble Pack, shaking the controller when the action on screen heated up. Definitely unnecessary, but Rumble has been a staple in video game controllers ever since the Rumble Pack's introduction, and without it, we wouldn't have gotten 1-2 switch. Blade guns, you don't need them, but on-rail shooters wouldn't be the same without these things. And imagine Dance Dance Revolution without the dance pad, it's just a revolution at that point. God, I've been waiting to scoff at something today, that'll do. Gimmicks may be unnecessary, but they can be fun additions that spice things up and eventually turn into necessities. However, if they bog down the experience and make it less usable or fun at the expense of adding a bullet point on the back of the box, that's when everybody starts to pout. Like I said, gimmicks can be good. These gimmicks just went too far. You know what was like the lamest gimmick ever? Blowing into the microphone. I know the blowing into the mic fan patrol will rush to defend the thing, but I never found it to be that great. Doing this is such a turnoff. It's often exclusively in games that just don't work where you have to stop and blow into the microphone, i.e., every game it's in. Actually, it works alright with Nintendogs. Problem is, there's gonna be a good 12 miles worth of spit on your screen. Who doesn't love plastic shells to pop your controller into? The classic turn my Wii remote into a baseball bat initiative every company attempts at some point. These things were the craze back in the Wii era, as in they were easy gifts to buy somebody who owns a Wii. Nintendo themselves took part in the trend with the Wii Wheel and Wii Zapper. Sometimes these things help certain games feel more immersive, I guess. I mean, as immersive as you can make Link's crossbow training in Mario Kart Wii, but most of the third-party ones that pertain to Wii Sports were just lame. Dangling nostalgia in front of our faces has been a popular gimmick lately, with the likes of Mario, Zelda, and Sonic cramming in a fair amount of beloved retro throwbacks in almost every one of their recent games. It's a given that a newly released game in a beloved older series will have some sort of nostalgia crammed in it. Wolfenstein The New Order has a playable Wolfenstein 3D Easter egg, Uncharted 4 has a playable level of Crash Bandicoot, Sonic Mania. In general, this isn't bad by any means, but let me tell you, I've seen at the very least too many 8-bit Mario sprites in the latest few games, and seeing one has lost all meaning. It just kind of feels like we're obsessed with the past, or we'd rather exploit our old creations you love rather than make new creations you love.
Take what you do best and create a website that's worthy of it. With AI website creation from Wix, every click is an opportunity to shape your brand, fine-tune your design, generate content in seconds, and showcase what you love so others will love it too. It's your business, your website. You do it yourself on Wix.
Visit G2A.com and browse thousands of keys for games and DLC. Discover brand new titles, timeless classics, and everything in between. Start your new adventure here.
I've talked before about why I really still appreciate and like the Wii, but that doesn't mean I don't hate it.
God, Steamman really did a number to our sarcasm barrier.
If I could sue a game controller, I would first go after whatever the hell this third-party Wii U controller is, and then sue the Wii Remote for deception. The trailers Nintendo produced for the Wii implied the Wii Remote was much more capable of precise motion control movement than it really was. Combined with the manure pile of games that exploited the Wii Remote's controls with little thought or care and the Wii's general audience of casual gamers, and the introduction of the Wii Motion Plus that actually made the Wii Remote function how it was originally advertised to, the Wii was consistently called a gimmick. While I don't think the entirety of the Wii was a gimmick, the motion controls were definitely better than a traditional controller in some cases, it's hard to argue that a good chunk of the console's identity was nothing more than one. But you wanna know when Nintendo took the Wii's gimmick too far? Nothing like a Wii Vitality sensor announcement to consistently make you wake up in a cold sweat. This was just riding on the coattails of the success of Wii Fit. They never announced how it would play into any form of software. It never came out, but they did say they would want to try bringing it out when the technology advances, so it'll be back, mark my words. When a gimmick is successful, others take note. As you can see here, we have two examples of add-ons with a case of Wii gimmickitis, both releasing in 2010. First up, the Kinect, whose gimmick relied on ousting the Wii's gimmick as yesterday's news with its own hands-free gimmick. The Xbox 360's Kinect was advertised as life without a controller, and everybody who didn't know what a video game controller was shouted, "Sold!" After using it, almost every application using the Kinect was hands down much slower, and in some cases more frustrating and confusing than using an actual controller. But that didn't stop game companies from saying, you know what would be better with Kinect? Mass Effect 3!
That's a ugly idea barrier too!
The Kinect was a complete gimmick, which did nothing but annoy Xbox owners. Using it was a hassle, and most of the games that required it were lame. The only decent application it had was dancing games. But things went too far when Microsoft announced that the Xbox One was going to require the use of Kinect. You had to keep the thing plugged in for the console to even function. Of course, they realized that they actually wanted the Xbox One to sell well, and they removed the requirement. But still, nobody used the original version of Kinect and said, now this is what I call controlling a video game. It was sloppy, imprecise, and just not fun to use after the initial startup. Sony dabbled in motion controls before the great 2010 plague occurred. One was the iToy for the PlayStation 2, a cute little device that is comparable to the Kinect but wasn't pushed as hard. But we're talking this. The PlayStation Move was Sony running down the stairs to hop on the motion control bandwagon and falling down the first 24 flights of 24 flights of stairs. The Move was technologically more advanced and precise than the Wii Remote, utilizing a glowing orb to track movement. However, I don't think any Wii owners saw the Move as an upgrade for the ages. It was more of a Wii for owners of the PS3 already, not a reason to buy a PS3. Which is why seeing games require or emphasize the Move controller became a bit too much. However, the era of gimmicks continued on with Wii U. I think this was a more offensive gimmick than the Wii, because at least with the Wii, people knew what the gimmick was, and they wanted it for that reason. I don't even know what a Wii U is. You're expecting me to know what its gimmick was? After doing some research, the ancient scrolls foretold that the Wii U's gimmick was the Wii U gamepad, having an extra screen on the controller that could be used for God knows what. The problem was the benefit of having an extra screen was only really seen as a benefit to those who already owned a Wii U. I think most people who saw this thing said, why would I need that? The gimmick didn't lure people in and made the overall package much more expensive. And on top of that, various games utilized the second screens in ways that made the games lesser experiences. Paper Mario Color Splash, Star Fox Zero, it clunked up the control, overcomplicated things. It wasn't pretty sometimes. Now that's not to say the second screen wasn't used in good ways, but the lack of software that truly took advantage of the two screens says right there that Nintendo just saw the Wii U's gamepad as a gimmick and not something to make gameplay better. The Wii U's successor, the Nintendo Switch, definitely does a gimmick right. I mean, you want to use the system as just a home console? Leave it right there. Want to play it portably? Take it out. Blam. Play the way you want to play. The gimmick is understandable, useful, and doesn't affect gameplay negatively. The same can be said about the Nintendo 3DS. Classes-free 3D. You can use it if you're into that sort of thing. You can turn it off if you're a total prude. Gimmicks aren't inherently bad. They're vital to keeping things fresh. Anything new can be labeled as a gimmick. But of course, the word is often associated with lame additions to things. A bad gimmick is something that is merely added to slap a selling point on the box. It has no real benefits and often comes with problems. The cons simply outweigh the pros. The Kinect, Wii U, the Power Glove, all gimmicks that were merely marketing tools. A gimmick goes too far when it's crammed down the consumer's throat and is simply here to sell the product with no real benefits. In fact, some downsides that wouldn't be here without it. Gimmicks work best when they're thought of by designers, artists, the creative teams producing the product. They're more thoughtful, generally have more value and worth in them, and possibly enhance the product like crazy this way. When marketing creates a gimmick and then tells the creative team to make something around it, good things can come out of that, but we generally get stuff like ugh, yikes, and eek. Forcing motion controls down throats, a feature that just doesn't work as advertised, changing gameplay for the sake of advertising instead of, you know, gameplay. I like me a good gimmick if it's well thought out and doesn't bog anything down, but a lot of what we went over today, yeah, parasites.
Just so you know, supper around here can be kind of an event. You just have to see it.
Well, it looks like my journey today has come to an end. It's been an honor to serve a part of the fellow unity of certified killers of bad astronomic-resistant ne'er-do-wells. Should really look into an abbreviation for that. It's also an honor to be a part of this whole 1950s B-movie shtick. Remember, it's not a phase, it's a lifestyle. It was a phase. Hey y'all, Scott here. 3D is the future yesterday! And I'm not referring to 2D 3D, I'm referring to 3D 3D. Pretty realistic, huh? I'll take that as a yes. Look out, it's right in front of you! Oh God! 3D, a gimmick I have to check the meter to comment on. Who gives a sh**? Every few decades it goes in and out of fashion, primarily being used in movie theaters to sell more expensive tickets. Wow, it's like I'm really there. That's f***ed up. Pop the glasses on and you're transported to a world of layers. It can be a pretty cheap effect, but it can add to some experiences, and honestly, video games seem to be the perfect medium for the gimmick. Stereoscopic 3D allows you to better judge depth of field or have something pop out at you, which could greatly improve numerous titles. Plus, video games were already being advertised as immersive adventures, so adding 3D to the mix just flat out made sense. To which many would say, well, yeah, of course, the Nintendo 3DS released in 2011 featuring a screen that could display 3D visuals without the need of glasses. There was a lot that led to that moment, believe me. But before we get too deep, keep in mind, stereoscopic 3D flickers a bunch. If you have a sensitivity to flashing images or experience epilepsy, anything like that, this whole 3D gaming talk may not be for you, so keep that in mind. 3D gaming can be traced all the way back to a little arcade game from 1982 titled Sub-Rock 3D, created by Sega, an arcade machine with a pair of goggles mounted directly in front of the screen. Sega, they gave us Sonic and Pink Eye. It's a naval combat game, which, hey, if any game makes sense to incorporate a periscope that doubles as a pair of 3D glasses, it's this one. It does actually feel like you're controlling the artillery of a submarine this way, and as a bonus, you see some depth with the stereoscopic 3D. However, this was only possible in the arcades. Sub-Rock 3D did get a ColecoVision release in the homes, but only a Sub-Rock without any 3D effect. And this allowed me to reflect on some personal choices of mine. I f***ed up. Without the 3D, this game was entirely disposable, which definitely proved the point early on here. 3D should enhance an already great game, not be the entire point of its existence. I think being in the arcades does lend a game like this to be more of a cheap gimmick. When it comes to at-home play, however, I feel that there's some potential. These games have to be longer lasting, no one and dones. So if they supported 3D, who knows, we might find ourselves a killer app for stereoscopic gaming. I have a lot of hope for what happens in 1982. Here we have the Vectrex, the future of gaming. Wow, that's fucking bleak. I don't care what anybody says, this is one of the coolest gaming oddities. It's basically a miniature TV with a controller built in, displaying vector graphics, which aren't pixelated. They're simple, but perfectly smooth at the same time. There's truly nothing else like it. It's something you have to see to believe in person, because no matter who you are, you'll at least think it looks kinda neat. But what would make it look kinda neater is the Vectrex 3D Imager, the first pair of 3D glasses created for a home video game. Portable video game.
Vectrex. Each 3D Vectrex game comes with a color wheel that you insert into the headset and spins while playing. Side note, mine came stained. It's kind of funny how the Vectrex out of all consoles was the first to have an accessory like this, considering how the display was black and white. You'd have to lather these overlays on it to even get a hint of the stuff. But to make this work for 3D, the headset is where you put the overlay, and it spins it around to alternate colors, making the graphics appear to have depth. Supposedly. Yeah, I have 3D Crazy Coaster here, one of the few 3D Vectrex titles. I guess this is supposed to be a roller coaster simulator for f***ing robots! Yeah, for me personally, the 3D imager doesn't really add a whole lot of depth to the image. It more so just makes it viewable to me. But this helped to lay the groundwork for 3D gaming at home, and should be respected for that. Making a 3D headset for a black and white vector graphic based console in 1982? That takes guts and methamphetamine. But in 1987, all it took was the latter. The Famicom 3D system by Nintendo. Yep, 3D gameplay on the Japanese version of what we got over here as the NES, the Famicom. Oh my god, this is such a sleek, futuristic accessory. What did we get over here in North America? A really bad shopping list. So we never got a full-blown official 3D gaming accessory for the NES over here. Any game that had a 3D mode, you would just use the typical paper glasses for. These were the reason why I never understood 3D branded technology being so much more expensive back then. Why are they expecting me to pay thousands more for a feature Spy Kids gave out for free? Well,
Michelob Ultra Zero. Zero alcohol. Ultra smooth taste. Just 29 calories.
have you tried playing Red Racer in 3D? He did. The Famicom 3 headset is far more advanced. It plugs into the system and conveys a much stronger and more stable stereoscopic effect than what you'd get with a standard pair of paper glasses. But that's like saying this corpse is stronger than this one. So this headset uses a style of stereoscopic 3D possible by active shutters. Basically, the gameplay flickers between two images, in which each lens of the headset will exclusively show each eye one of the two, which creates a 3D effect. Now you're probably wondering how good the 3D effect is on 8-bit games from the 1980s. So that's why society is crumbling. Well, I have a couple of compatible games right here. There weren't many, only 7, and only one of them was made by Nintendo themselves. Famicom Grand Prix 2 3D Hot Rally, an entry in a series you could consider to be a precursor to Mario Kart. To enable the 3D mode in most of these games, you just hit the select button and wow, you're transported to the same damn game you were playing before. It's just harder to see now. So the 3D works. In a game like 3D Hot Rally, I can clearly see that the car's in the foreground with the other elements in the background, but it is a very weak effect. It's there, but I have yet to play any Famicom game where the 3D enhances the experience and doesn't hinder it. Take, for example, this game, Falcyon. Everybody knows Falcyon.
Okay, well, not the morgue.
This is a space shooter played from the perspective of behind the ship, which is rare for games of this era. It works fairly well in 2D. However, in 3D, I just get a whole lot of double vision. Maybe it's my eyes, the TV I'm using, the age of the 3D headset. I don't know, because apparently this game is considered by some to have some of the best 3D on the system, though I cannot see how people would think it's necessary. This game, alongside all the others, works much better in 2D. The 3D is a cute little gimmick, but only for a second. Then after that, you ask yourself the fabled question: why? While the Famicom 3D system works, it doesn't add anything to these games other than a very slight feeling of depth. But if anything, it makes them harder to play due to the constant flickering and awkward headset. With the goggles on, it's like I'm playing the game with sunglasses. Everything's darker, and with the glasses using active shutters and the game flickering back and forth, the 3D may work most of the time, but it's always going to be a much clearer and easier experience playing in 2D. And the only games released for the thing were either just racers or shooters, and if they came over to North America, they included paper glasses in the package, which didn't work as well, but for how little the Famicom 3D system enhanced the experience, I think these were a fine substitute. Needless to say, the Famicom 3D system flopped. Only 7 games, none of which were the most compelling and only covered like 2 genres. The 3D effect, while there, wasn't good enough to warrant setting up the headset to play every time and investing in a whole ass accessory like this. Yep, I'm putting my foot down with the whole Famicom 3D system debate. Damn, Scott, should I say that in the open just like that? Nope. Well, Nintendo wasn't the only video game company pushing 3D in the home at the time. We're cycling back over to Sega, who released this, the Sega 3D glasses for the Sega Master System. In terms of how it works, remember this? Yeah, these function in pretty much the same way. However, the game lineup is far more impressive. There are 8 games. While Nintendo dipped their toe into 3D, Sega threw their whole ass ankle into it. There's so much more variety in the games that supported the feature, plus the Sega 3D glasses released outside of Japan, which says a lot. That's correct, we had the right to play Zaxxon in 3D. Damn, it's good to live in Ohio. Yeah, I'd say these were a far better value than the Nintendo equivalent.
I angered them.
Moving into the 1990s, 3D wasn't attempted nearly as much on a consumer level. Most projects that were being developed never saw the light of day, like Sega VR for the Sega Genesis. I mean, the PlayStation 4 can barely do virtual reality. It needs a whole ass disc to be plugged in. You expected the Sega Genesis to be able to hold its own? However, Nintendo pulled through.
They did it. They f***ed up!
The Virtual Boy was Nintendo's second attempt at stereoscopic 3D gaming. We know that because it has the blood of its elders' victims on it. This was cobbled together because Nintendo kept delaying the release of the Nintendo 64 and needed a body. So out comes an unfinished game system simply meant to keep store shelves warm, and a 3D game system at that. See, the Virtual Boy being all about 3D from the get-go rather than simply being relegated to an add-on helped give us some of the most inventive and innovative applications of 3D gaming yet. It's also the Virtual Boy. Visuals restricted to a red and black color palette. Burgundy wasn't returning their calls. Awkward design that invited you to confuse your neighbors across the street. The Virtual Boy was one of the biggest busts in all of gaming. But that doesn't mean it didn't have value. The specs here allowed for far more types of 3D games rather than just shoot or drive. We got platformers focusing on hopping between the foreground and background, a first-person survival horror game, puzzle games, boxing, tennis, golf, baseball, fishing, water world. While 3D gaming was far from necessary for most, if not all of these games and genres as a whole, the Virtual Boy helped show how 3D could potentially enhance them. Being able to judge where everything in the environment is in relation to the golfer, being immersed in a world of horror, not being able to look away like you could with a TV screen. I'm not saying the Virtual Boy necessarily succeeded with these concepts. I mean, it all worked fine enough, though it didn't light the world on fire. But it most certainly showed how they were possible, and you can see their innovations present in modern gaming experiences. The Virtual Boy only had nearly 24 games released for it worldwide, and was discontinued in 1996, less than a year after its debut. The 3D was honestly some of the best seen in gaming thus far, but does that really matter when you make 50% of these glasses worthless? Most of the Virtual Boy's shortcomings stemmed from cutting costs, like with the color palette and age restrictions. You probably shouldn't view this if you're under the age of 7. Well, yeah, you probably shouldn't drink and drive, but people still do it. So, what did we learn from the Virtual Boy?
Nothing.
Well, the failure of this console can show consumers didn't really respond well to a fully 3D game system. Stereoscopic 3D is an illusion. Many people can see it, but some just can't. And even those who can see it, it can really wear down your eyes and hand out headaches. So while the Virtual Boy did find far more creative uses for 3D in gaming than ever before, you couldn't turn the 3D off. Well, without...
Peacock brings the thrills of Jurassic World Rebirth home. Run! Experience the most colossal film of the year. Jurassic World Rebirth, rated PG-13, streaming now only on Peacock.
I'll reintroduce myself. Still Don Smith, Nighthawk of the Evernight Goddess.
That dream, was he manipulating it? Was he beyond her?
Surgery.
For Mario Clash?
It was completely impractical. This was a system made for a cheap 5-minute thrill, or look, the baseball's coming right towards me. I can do that for free. Not legitimate gaming experiences that players were expecting in 1995. I mean, most of the Virtual Boy's library consisted of titles that felt more like arcade games you played for 3 minutes at a time compared to the multi-hour experiences being released around then. No wonder this thing flopped. While it did have some merit, this was exactly what was wrong with 3D in gaming, putting 3D before gaming. However, that didn't deter Nintendo from pursuing this field even more. At this point, I don't know what would have. So the GameCube and Game Boy Advance were initially designed with some 3D capabilities in mind, more so the GameCube. Games like Luigi's Mansion in particular were tested with stereoscopic 3D, which makes a lot of sense. Each room in the game almost feels like you're peering through a dollhouse, so it definitely would feel right at home with the feeling of depth 3D allows. However, while the GameCube did have the necessary components inside it to display 3D imagery, like you can crack yours open right now and we'll find the technology required for such a thing, Nintendo opted to just scrap the feature for consumers, as it would have been far too expensive for a headset accessory and even a TV capable of 3D back then. It was always difficult for me as a kid to understand why sometimes 3D was expensive as it was, and other times it was included in a $5 Walmart DVD. Now, I definitely understand the type of 3D Nintendo was testing with the GameCube was much more robust and functional, while the cheap red and blue paper glasses made more sense for a picture book or something. But I think my childhood mentality of, why is this 3D more expensive than this 3D, is something many people had, which is why more elaborate expensive 3D devices didn't catch on too much. So, how about some games that just support those cheap paper 3D glasses? What's the worst that can happen?
And these games are bad?
This type of 3D is called anaglyph, and is generally one of the cheapest ways to achieve a 3D effect, as crude as it may be. You're not gonna get very lifelike depth out of these things. They work best with something like a comic book, and when you try to use them with media featuring heavy amounts of movement, the effect just doesn't work as well, and in addition to that, the original color palette is washed out and lost. But that didn't stop Konami from putting this feature in Contra Legacy of War for the original PlayStation. Ew! The game itself isn't good and now I can't see it? Well, shit, that's actually better. Slide 3 on the PlayStation 2 offered stages in 3D, of course being optional, viewable with glasses included within the manual. They even kind of look like Sly Cooper's eyes, which is a nice touch. Though both of these examples showcase how anytime anaglyph 3D was featured in a game, it was always a complete gimmick with barely to no amounts of value. I need to do better research. In reality, there is one more notable use of anaglyph 3D, and that's with Metal Gear Acid 2 on the PSP. Bundled in here is the Solid Eye, a foldable cardboard contraption that goes over the PSP screen to allow the player to view 3D images in-game. This is something you'd expect to see on a Nintendo console long before a Sony one, and honestly, I feel like you can make endless connections between this and the modern method of obtaining inexpensive virtual reality by folding together cardboard and sliding a screen in there. Metal Gear Acid 2 did this all the way back in 2005. What's your excuse? Featuring 3D, however, was hardly ever a great selling point. I mean, most of these games save the explanation for the back cover. It's obvious not many people really cared about 3D. If they did, there would be far more applications in gaming than there ended up being. I think we were all happy with the story ending there. And Nintendo and Sega tried it, and tried it. Nothing of note happened. In fact, it hurt their companies, if anything. And including paper 3D glasses was pretty much just a novelty. Most games that did it, and they did it because they wanted to distract people from their game being as mediocre as it was.
What?
So by the year 2009, it was time to say goodbye to reality! 3D is back in the mainstream, with the release of the movie Avatar setting box office records, with the 3D edition being held in high regards as the version to see. Everybody was all about 3D again. Every blockbuster film was releasing alongside a 3D version, with some making the 3D the core identity of the flick. Various classic movies were re-released in theaters in 3D. 3D TV sets were being sold as the next big thing, with 3D Blu-rays and 3D Blu-ray players being pushed right alongside them. Yep, it was a good time to be stupid. Now, the release of Avatar in late 2009 wasn't the true beginning of this 3D resurrection, as these 3D products were being developed and produced within the year or two beforehand. But because of that, the film's release couldn't have happened at a more perfect time. Trying to give consumers a reason for wanting this became a whole lot easier after they came back from seeing Avatar in 3D.
The hell was that?
So in came the 3D revolution, with Sony being one of the biggest supporters. I wonder why. The PlayStation 3 received a firmware update in the fall of 2010, enabling support for 3D TVs. And not everybody could experience 3D on the PS3. You had to own a 3D TV. I always see these logos on games this generation advertising 3D compatibility, and cross my fingers when opening up the menus, turning on the functionality, thinking, once again, why wouldn't I just be able to use my paper glasses?
Why wouldn't I just be able to be myself?
Alright, this is a 3D TV. And not just any 3D TV, the PlayStation 3D display. Yes, a TV with PlayStation branding all over it, much like how Sony named a theater the PlayStation Theater. Is there any relevance to the name? Well, obviously not. By most accounts, the PlayStation 3D display is just a regular 24-inch 3D TV. You can use any console on it, and if they support 3D TVs, you can experience it with this set. You get these glasses which need to be recharged, which That right there sealed 3D TV's fate. Try explaining this to your dad. So not only is this not affordable like the paper glasses, but they need a power source, unlike the plastic movie theater glasses. I'm not disputing the need for power in glasses like these, but think of this from his perspective. This is my first 3D TV experience. It's also my last. This uses that active shutter technology, which is why the glasses need powered. The flicker between frames constantly helps maintain a high resolution image. Those cheaper 3D glasses, yeah, they may not need power, but their method of creating a 3D image basically split the image in half, and in tandem, the resolution, so the image is much blurrier with these. So that's why we have glasses like these, and why 3D TV is a specific technology, even though, once again, I watched f***ing Shrek 3D on a portable DVD player in 2005. I know it's different, but I don't think consumers knew that. Well, here we go. A PlayStation 3 game in 3D.
Meet the brand new Wondershare UniConverter 14. The all-in-one video toolbox to convert, compress, edit videos, and much more.
This should be an easy fight.
Don't let server lag set you back. Host your next server with bisect hosting.
It's like I'm really there. You can only experience conventional 3D so many times before just going, yeah, I get it. Don't get me wrong, many of these titles that support 3D, they integrate it fairly well. The standout title here is MotorStorm Apocalypse, which was actually bundled with the PlayStation 3D display due to its use of Simulview, a feature on some Sony 3D TVs allowing for split screen without the split screen. Two people wearing 3D glasses would each separately see their own screen in multiplayer. No squished or cropped aspect ratio, no screen peaking. It was a notable idea. Only around 6 games supported the feature because 7 was woo. For the most part, 3D PS3 games were your standard of fare. More depth in your image, nothing crazy. I mean, a game like Uncharted 3 looks good in 3D, but no way in hell I'd want to play the entire game like this. More PS3 games supported this than Xbox 360. You can tell by the dedicated logo on the PS3 titles compared to the Arts and Crafts project on every 360 release. But most of these games work fine enough in 3D. They just aren't at all necessary. It's cool to see how the gun looks in Killzone 3, extending a bit outside the TV, and now fighting in Mortal Kombat has so many layers in the background. But then you have a Sonic Generations to ruin your breakfast.
I don't buy it.
This is some of the most unrealistic 3D I've ever experienced. And that's not even accounting for the fact, well, I don't think this is possible. But the 3D feels like it's layered incorrectly. And sometimes it feels like background elements are in the foreground, while the foreground is in the background. I've seen numerous elements in double vision, on top of the fact when the 3D is noticeable, it's not really that deep, both literally and metaphorically. Like, it barely sinks in, and it just doesn't have anything of value to offer. It makes the game harder to play, and when it works, it's not impressive in the slightest. Now, let's be honest. This product format is obviously an evolution of those original 3D glasses we tried out for the Sega Master System and Famicom, though you used active shutters as well. The problem is, this is not a big enough evolution. Comparing these two products, they have far more in common than you may initially think. And they're 20 years apart from each other, with this one being heralded as the future. Like, yeah, it's more advanced, but like, they're doing the same shit. Numerous console games from 2009 to 2013 supported 3D displays, and none of which being all too necessary. It's like, yeah, Resistance 3 works fine in 3D, but who cares? You're not missing anything by not playing it in 3D. If anything, you're missing more by playing it in 3D because the image probably won't be as clear. Even with the most optimized games, double vision still pops up. But ever since 2013, it became so damn rare to see a stereoscopic video game release. Which this just so happened to be around the time 3D was starting to go out of fashion again. 3D TVs were seen as a fad, not even a fad that really caught on, more so a fad that TV manufacturers were desperately trying to make a fad. I mean, none of this made sense for the consumer. Why would you want your living room to feel like a theme park attraction? 3D is a concept that works in small doses when you're out and about. Why not? I'll try this out, make it more of a fun evening. Not as the default way to consume content recreationally, which is why it's so interesting to see the most popular 3D device was fucking hell again? Nintendo's back after trying 3D. The Nintendo 3DS, the successor to the Nintendo DS, was unveiled at E3 2010, utilizing a screen capable of displaying 3D images without the need for special glasses. This was a big deal. The barrier between 3D and the rest of the world has finally been eliminated. Games can be in 3D without the hassle of needing to buy a 3D TV with clunky glasses. We can finally experience 3D normally as nature intended. The future for 3D content is bright, and Nintendo was leading the chart. So Nintendo was set to go all in with the 3D craze, being the focal point of their latest handheld, the product line that was one of their most important, and those first few years of 3DS advertising pushed it hard. No need for glasses, games more immersive than ever before. Games that were far more precise with the aid of 3D. While the Nintendo 3DS's main gimmick leaned a bit hard into Virtual Boy territory, so do I. But this felt like Nintendo truly learned some lessons from that experience. For one, you can turn off the 3D. You don't ever have to play with it on, or if you don't want to. And if you do play with it on, you can adjust the intensity on the fly. That would have been a great feature on the 3D TV's glasses. This is the most user-friendly application of stereoscopy that exists, and it works beautifully without glasses. Of course, you have to hold the system dead on for the effect to work properly, but if you do that, it'll work properly. And the games themselves, I mean, talk about the best uses of 3D so far in gaming. Super Mario 3D Land was designed around it, making it easier to properly land jumps. Kirby Triple Deluxe, Planet Robobot, Donkey Kong Country Returns 3D, and Mutant Mudds have you hopping between the foreground and background. Remakes like Star Fox 64 3D, Ocarina of Time 3D, Majora's Mask 3D, Xenoblade 3D all implement the feature beautifully and breathe new life into iconic worlds. I'd say Mario 3D Land may be the only example of a game that may need 3D more than it doesn't, but many titles on the 3DS utilized it quite well, and being a flick of the slider away gave the 3D effect way more of an impact than going through hell and back to play Sonic Generations poorly. Now, I can play Sonic Generations poorly because the 3D isn't the issue, it's the game itself that fucking stinks. Luigi's Mansion received a sequel on the 3DS, Dark Moon, with superb 3D in tow. Like I said about the first game, the room-to-room camera angle made that game feel right at home using the gimmick, so a sequel coming to Nintendo's 3D handheld just felt like destiny. And then the original itself was remade entirely for the 3DS, so good for you, Nintendo! You fulfilled a lifelong desire twice! Why are you still so angry? Many 3DS games just have fine enough 3D effects, with a few having poorly implemented 3D and some just straight up not including it for whatever reasons. But the ones that knocked it out of the park, those were the games that truly made the 3D effect worth it. Not that much. Yeah, the 3DS was priced at $250 at launch, and after a successful first month, nothing. Well, that is if you count no sales as nothing. Nintendo had to slash the price just 4 months into the handheld's life. That is unprecedented. But once Nintendo wised up and focused more on the actual games, sales went up and kept going up. And by 2013, the 3DS experienced its most content-rich year yet. I mean, so many good games to play, and to celebrate, Nintendo gutted their child. The Nintendo 2DS, releasing just 2.5 years after the 3DS initially launched, got rid of the 3D display and a few other superfluous features to offer a much more affordable and kid-friendly product. And remember, 3D is not meant for the eyes of a child, so for Nintendo to sell a product that has a giant warning making it somewhat inaccessible to children under 7 with a new Pokemon game coming out, what have we done? And while 3D in the 3DS wasn't killed off with the introduction of the 2DS, it was obviously downplayed in the marketing for a bit there. The new 3DS and new 3DS XL
Alright guys,
upon the 3D effect,
that was really fun.
eye tracking to ensure you don't need to hold the 3DS
Stream was cool. I think my camera glitched out at some points, but night y'all, that shit was fun.